This is the Town of Harpswell's Budget Advisory Committee meeting on December 2nd, 2024. And you all got an agenda in your email, and we have it in front of you. I'm going to mention before we adopt the agenda that certain representatives of these items are here in the audience or are coming at certain times to speak to us. And so we may need to interrupt a discussion to allow that person to speak. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you. Once again, I neglected to introduce the committee.
Dave Zamorowski.
And Linda Hall,
Marge Webster Warren.
Mac and Pulsifer.
Jane Meisenbach.
and from the administration.
Town Administrator Christy Ayana.
Deputy Town Administrator Terry Gaudet.
Select Board Representative Jane Covey.
Thank you. So item 3 on our agenda is to review the following budget items. The first one is count 1650 special projects, and I understand one of the special projects is a request for a consultant to help with solar evaluation, and that Howard Marshall is here to speak to us. Is that right? So this is account 1650 in your books.
And if I could just make one comment. So the Budget Committee received a request today from the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee.
Yep.
And I was reviewing that prior to it being distributed. And one of the bullet points on that memo to the committee, to the Budget Committee from the other committee, suggests the use of that fund for solar assistance. So I do think as you listen to the chair of the Energy and Technology Committee and the request from that committee, you also have a request to add money to the Resiliency and Sustainability Reserve, and one of the bullet points suggests that it could be used for solar. So I think there could be some duplication here, and as long as we get something funded, I would probably have a recommendation, but I'll let the committee move forward.
Okay, thank you for that information. Mr. Marshall, we invited you to come because we discussed this request last week, and we had a lot of questions about it. And we had a memo from you, I believe, on why you wanted that or had made that request. Would you go over that with us and what your goals are?
Yeah, the Energy and Technology Committee has been looking at the possibility of solar for the town for quite a while. And as a rather long-term stopgap, several years ago recommended that the town sign up with a solar field, a community solar farm, which is where we're getting our electricity from now. That's, it saves some money, it gets some green electricity into the grid, but for a long term, owning the facility makes more sense. The trade-off is, this is the simplest solution. We simply write a smaller check to a different place each month, but it goes on forever. If we owned our own array, it would, after a payback period of about a third of the life of it, we'd continue to get electricity from it, for another 15 or 20 years. So we've been going round and round on this, and it's a complicated question. There's lots of variables, and they tend to change with time. The electric rates, the cost of the, the cost of the array and whatever. And what we'd like to do is get somebody who is actually an expert in the field instead of those of us who've been looking at it for a number of years and trying to figure out what to do, to look at the possibilities and guide us to a solution. It could be to stay with the current scheme that we've got for simplicity. It could be that the other possibilities are too complicated, or it could be that they make sense, but we haven't really been able to close that loop. And so I thought that it'd be nice to get someone in this business to come in and actually, not be a company that might want to sell us the facility, but somebody who would help us evaluate our options and make a choice.
Yeah. In your analysis, are you going to include the capital costs to purchase it, which would be substantial, and also best estimates of maintenance that will go forward? Because often those are somewhat hidden at the outset and really do drive up the cost.
Right, and that's, again, that's why we want somebody who's more familiar with how this has evolved over the years. Yes, those are certainly the, major considerations. And we've looked at the financing options, and those change also.
Of course.
One of the things is that we're not doing this full-time, and every time we kind of go around the loop, the goals have moved.
My other and related question is, as you develop this information, will you consider sort of public-private partnerships where this is an investment for interested people?
Sorry.
Will you investigate the possibility of public-private partnerships where it would be an investment for some participants, and they would earn a return, but it would reduce the cost to the town?
Yes, that actually is the model that we had looked at originally, because until recently, that was the only model that worked, because the building one of these arrays only makes financial sense these days with the rebates and the incentives. And the problem was that until recently, the only real incentive there was a tax credit that you could take. And since the town doesn't pay taxes, there was no place to take the credit.
Right.
My understanding is that has been loosened up, and that there are ways that you can get the incentives directly for nonprofits in towns and the like. But that's fairly recent, and I don't know the details on that. But for a long time, the only real option was to form an LLC of private investors who would put up the money and then get paid back out of the price of the electricity, during which time they would take advantage of the tax credits. And that, and now that's certainly that's certainly one of the options, but it's not the only option at this point.
So I'm glad to know you've thought about it along these lines. That's great.
Okay, Dave?
Absent the tax credits, these things are extremely expensive as a source of energy, so somebody has to take advantage of that, as they do today with community solar, right? I have a couple of questions. One, you described in the beginning the differences in the cash flow streams of community versus rooftop solar, right? One is essentially perpetual, the other has a finite life. I'd just like to point out to everybody that alone, that piece of information alone, doesn't mean anything. It's what you have to know is what the size of the payments are and calculate something akin to a present value. So while that is certainly true, there's a lot more to the picture than that simple statement would describe. The other is and I think maybe one of the reasons why this came up for a separate review is in response to questions about electrical costs at the town a meeting or two ago. I think, if I'm misremembering, correct me, but there was some not confusion, but I think a sense that there was not sufficient information for us to understand the current costs of community solar to the town. I don't know if you share that opinion, and if that in fact is true, what are you comparing these alternatives to if the information isn't available to understand current costs of community solar? And I realize you weren't here, so you weren't privy to that.
Maybe,
that
was it
conversation.
Terry who talk to us about that?
Howie's been aware of the issue that Rhonda's brought to your attention.
This is that there's, well, I mean, this is one of the reasons it would be nice if we had our own.
Right.
I mean, this was this community solar was supposed to make it simpler, but it made it more complicated. And, the problem is that if you have a house and you sign up for community solar, you have one bill and they credit it to that. And I guess the problem is that we've been having a lot of trouble getting the credits that we're earning off of our share of this community solar credited to the right account instead of just having credits that we could use. They get pushed into CMP and they show up on one of the accounts, and if it's not one that needs them, it's hard to.
And then we lose them, and then after
Right.
the summertime, we should have banked a lot. We haven't banked any from summer, so something's going on.
Okay, right, so, the problem is that unfortunately, there's no good, there's no one in charge of making sure that this gets handled properly. The PUC is dealing with CMP, but the solar farms just point their finger, and CMP points their finger back at the solar farms. I don't know what the solution is to that, and,
Wouldn't we want to, I mean, I'm not the expert like you guys are, but wouldn't we want to get to the bottom of that before we started looking at other alternatives? And maybe that's part of this project,
Well,
which is, somebody tell us what the hell, what we've done means.
What we should be getting.
I think that is part of it. That write-up at least says, and I think you said that in the beginning, that it's exploring alternatives, including the one that we're currently involved in.
Right.
Is that the right thing to continue, or is it time to, so I think that's part of the process.
Okay.
Rhonda's been chasing this down for many months, and it just turns into a lot of finger pointing back and forth. And it may be that the right thing to do is to move on to our plans to build our own array and give them the 1-year notice that they require for us to get out of it, and say, fine, if you can't straighten it out, we'll go some other route. But, I don't want to just say, so let's give them the notice now, because what we really want to do is figure out where we're going. I did talk to a consultant in this business, and he said that contacting him at the stage we're at now was a very good idea, because he spent a lot of time and effort unraveling a mess that another town did when they dived in and said, oh, we're going to build our own solar, and they didn't take into account a lot of these the considerations and the trade-offs. And he said that this would be a good time to have someone come in and look at what we've thought about and help us reach a decision.
It seems to me that, I don't want to belabor the point, but ultimately you're looking for some kind of cost per kilowatt hour or the equivalent thereof for our current engagement contract with community solar as something to compare against, whether it's
Yes.
rooftop or whether
Well,
it's ground mount or.
Right, but I think that we know what it's costing us now. The question, it's a separate issue of why is it costing us more than we think it should, right?
So we have a cost per.
Well,
kilowatt hour?
there's the amount we pay to the solar farm every month, and any extra we have to pay to CMP. You could factor into that if we're banking, credits, but if we're not banking credits, it's pretty straightforward. How much of the checks we're writing to the solar farm and CMP, that's what it's costing us. Is for, and the meters will show us how much electricity we're using. That's what sizing a facility would be based on, is how much electricity we're using. Another thing that we may need to take into account is the work that's going on right here now. That should shift our electrical demands probably upward at the savings of oil for heating this building. Some of the issues that the recycling center in its renovation, they're planning on having enough strength in the renovated building to be able to put solar panels on that roof, and that's a big roof. Could we just build stuff right around here that would provide all the electricity the town needs? Need somebody to help us figure that out. Like I say, an alternative is we could go to revision and assured and Sundog or whoever and get some bids, but they're just gonna give us a bid for, we'll build you a solar array.
Yeah,
Right now, what I
nobody's
want.
looking for that.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying that I think that now what we need is somebody who's not representing one of those companies that will come in and look at our choices. Is this location good, or the location at Mitchell Field, which I know was voted down for a big array, but, you know, we have talked for a number of years about a small array there that would just be enough for the town, for the town's meters.
I have a whole bunch of questions just came to mind, but one that I had early on, and I don't know anything about solar. So just sort of, you said you loop around it, and it comes back, and it's always different information you're getting. What is the most recent information you have that, about the cost of one of these systems that you're thinking of? I have no idea.
So, okay, I think what we're subscribed to at the community solar, if I remember correctly, is about 175 kilowatts worth of panels. That's roughly an acre's worth of panels, I think. Last time I priced something like this, and there are two opposing forces that will, make that, increase the uncertainty on that. Something like $2.80 per watt was a price, for a facility. Now, that is in fact the number that I paid for the 10,000 watts worth of panels that I have on the roof of my house. And that includes the panels and the wiring and the inverters, which convert it from.
You're forcing me to do a lot of math in my head.
No, wait, just wait,
didn't
just
wanna
wait,
do.
just wait.
You're getting there, okay.
Okay, so that would come out to about $550,000 for 175 kilowatts.
Which is what the town is getting currently through the solar farm.
Yes. But I think that the price per watt has probably come down, but with the inflation of everything, it's probably bounced back up. So I don't know, I think that 280 would be a maximum. I think that was for a smaller facility. I think that when you start talking about the larger arrays, an acre or 10 acres or whatever, you're looking at a lower price per watt just for economy of scale.
And what do we pay for community solar?
Well, what we're paying is we're buying the credits from them, right? It's not, the community solar is not like an ownership model,
No, I got it.
right? And so the price on the credits is roughly 85% of the price for the same electricity from CMP.
Okay, so 15%.
So 15%.
But I know that we're not on a residential model, and the way that they're priced is a little bit different, but it works out to roughly a 15% discount on your electric bill, is roughly what it is. So whatever the problem, of course, is that when the electric rates for CMP went way up, the cost of the solar farms didn't go up at all. They got a windfall out of that. So, we signed up for this, and then the CMP rates shot up based on the price of natural gas, which is no effect on solar farms. And the solar farms just pocketed the extra money because they're still at 15% off of whatever CMP is charging. Another advantage to owning it.
Roughly how big would that array be? You said 175 megawatt, roughly
Kilowatts, 175
sorry.
kilowatts is about an acre.
An acre's worth, okay.
But that's not what well, you don't know what you're considering here.
Well, no, that was the amount of electricity, that was calculated to produce the amount of electricity that the town uses over the course of a year. The thing is that of course, the panels are much more productive in the summertime and less in the wintertime, and so you calculate what you need to do over the course of 12 months. You build up credits in the summertime, you use them up in the wintertime. But the 175 kilowatts was the number of panels, basically, that would generate enough electricity to cover the town's annual usage over the course of the year.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark.
Oh, he was, okay.
Could you spend a minute on the qualifications of the consultant you're considering? I mean, their breadth of experience, who else they may have worked for, and so on and so forth. Give us some color on that.
Just a little bit. I spoke to him, I contacted the president of Assured Solar, who I've met, and said, who would I get for this? And he said, I am just the guy for you, and got him on the phone with me. I got a conference call going. We talked for about an hour. And he's done this for other towns. Like I say, he said that we're at the right stage to do this, unlike somebody that he spent a lot of time and effort unraveling a mess that they dug themselves into. I don't know a lot more than that, and I don't think he's the only choice. I just wanted to get some idea, was there somebody who would do this sort of thing? And I also asked him last week what he charges, and it's $200 an hour. So this would be 60 hours of his time, is what we've requested here. He thinks that would be plenty for the sort of help that we need.
Because it's related to my opening question, to give you really a holistic view. I mean, the town is going to have to spend time overseeing it, administering it, all the related issues that proliferate out from any major capital project.
Well,
Just the sheer cost and the relative
Right.
cost against CMP or a community solar provider is not the total.
Right. No, but I think that's why we need somebody who's got the experience doing this sort of thing, as opposed to, I hired Assured to put solar panels on my roof, and I looked into the community solar, for all the companies that have been sending all the postcards saying, sign up with us.
Sure.
And, but I'm not an expert on it either. And what I'm looking for is somebody who can help us. Like I say, we keep going around the loop, and every time we come around, something's different. There's a different incentive program. The prices for panels versus, the electric company rate has, that whole thing has changed. So, in here, in this thing that I wrote for Christie, could it include emergency backup power? One of the guys on the Resilience and Sustainability Committee was saying that he's got solar panels on his roof, no generator, and a Tesla Powerwall, I think. And he said that when the power goes out, he just runs off that battery, and every day it recharges off the solar panels, and at night they use the electricity, and they survive without a generator. Is there some option like that we could consider also? I don't know. It's again, those sorts of things are things that change every year. There's a big program that the state wants to install a large number of large batteries across the state, and I don't know whether that's something that would make sense as part of this. Another thing to consider would be if we could do the whole thing here, we could put pavilions over the parking lot perhaps, and the roof of the recycling center, maybe something on the ground of the recycling center parking lot. There's more construction cost in something like that probably than putting them on a roof, because you already have the roof and you just have to make sure it's strong enough. But on the other hand, it's space that we don't have to build something on the ground and take up ground space for it. So, I don't know how much room we have here and what that sort of thing would cost. But again, that's why I want to get somebody who's in the business to sit down with us and talk it over.
So will this report give you the final report, will this give you all of the information that you will need to make a recommendation to the town as to how to proceed? Will it leave any loose ends?
I don't know. I'm sorry, but,
It would seem to me you'd want to spell out what you were expecting, exactly what you were expecting the consultant to deliver.
My question is pretty simple, I think. I don't know. For the benefit of the town, we know what our costs are for CMP. So we're gonna know, we have some idea our costs for the community solar, correct? So we go this way, we're gonna be able to figure out what is the best financially over the long period, because this is gonna cost construction costs. So we'll have the answer to that?
I think so. I think that in fact, there's less uncertainty in the cost of building your own system, because it's almost entirely the upfront cost. And, you know, you can know that when you do it. And, you know, the ongoing maintenance and whatever is negligible compared to the construction cost. You know, it's not, you know, not a lot of moving parts involved.
I love the idea of the parking lot.
The town I moved here
Well-
from just did that, and their library is across the street from the town office. And they put the pavilion over the entire library parking lot. It's all solar panels. And across the street, there's a row of charging stations at the town office for the town vehicles. Again, that's probably not the least expensive way to do it, but it, you know,
In the long run?
well, I think that it has the advantage that, you know, it's less impact on other things, like having another fight over Mitchell Field.
I understand, sure.
At least in desert climates, it provides shade for parking cars underneath it.
I can see a lot of
Right,
benefits
other
for it,
things.
yeah.
I would just urge you, to the extent that this is approved and goes forward, to be, and I apologize if this sounds preachy, I don't intend it that way, but sometimes it comes out that way. Please make sure that they have all of the information at the end that you require to make a decision and
Yeah.
and I understand there's some things that you're just not gonna know, right? But be really prescriptive with respect to the consultants. We've used them forever on, well, Mitchell Field is one of the places, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm sort of blue in the face with consultants right now because they, and some of it's our fault, is gotta be really exact with respect to what that final product looks like and demand that with very little looseness. Because I'd hate there to be a round 2 or a round 3, or, oh geez, we got 17 questions that could have been answered, but we just, you know, we didn't ask them to do that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a reasonable suggestion, and I don't think that's gonna be that difficult to arrange, because I think what we really want is somebody who can look at all the different pieces we've looked at and compare them for us, where we're just having a tough time doing that.
Yeah, I'd love to see, and maybe it's just not possible, but I'd like to see something that says, here's what the cost of energy is today, that we're paying, not just the monthly fee, but some concept of how the credits work and should accrue to us, and maybe they have, or maybe they haven't.
Well, I think we've just learned a lesson that we should have gone, you know, had them make sure that we had a provision for how we would shift the credits between accounts, because, I mean, the way I understood it was, we'll have these credits, and we have these meters, and then, you know, they'll give the credits to CMP. But instead, they hand them to CMP, and either they designate, or CMP just designates a meter that they go to, and it's turned out to be impossible to move them. And that's, you know, that's the difficulty. But like I say, I mean, you know, you can see what we're paying now, and we can also see how much electricity we're using from the, you know, from the monthly bills. So evaluating that is not that difficult. The question is looking at what our options are, and, you know, which of these different possibilities would make sense. And another thing we'll have to factor in is flexibility, you know. We're putting in a bunch of heat pumps, so suddenly our electric usage is gonna change. We put up, I mean, I think what may have caused the problem with the solar farm is that their original numbers, which appear to be inflexible, included a significant portion of the town's electricity goes for streetlights. And we put up LED streetlights and reduced the power demands on the streetlight meter. And so now that, I think, is soaking up a bunch of credits that it doesn't need, and they're not going to the other bills. And
So
so,
those expire effectively? That's a separate account?
We lost some, yes.
yeah. You have a year to use.
Good job on the LEDs, by the way.
Thank you.
That's a big win.
But, you know, so I mean, the other thing is to be able to, you know, take into account flexibility like that. And I think that, you know, the recommendation could come back. Go to the solar farm and say, fix it, or we're gonna give you our notice, and we'll go spend a year negotiating with another solar farm and say, we want a phone number we can call to move the credits. I don't know. I mean, that could turn out to be the right solution too. The problem is that there's so many moving parts, and none of us are experts in the field. So I think it would be helpful to have somebody who's done this sort of planning to advise us.
Just get what you want, get what you need.
Oh, yes, yes.
Make sure you get what you need from them.
Anything else?
I think we're good. Thank you so much for
All right.
coming and talking
Just-
to us about
may I-
this.
Thank you.
May I just
Mackin
make
has a
one-
question.
And I guess this is really, Jane, for you. Have you thought about having the town attorney make that call? And say, why can't these credits get changed to a meter that makes sense for the town?
We have
Maybe you've
worked
done-
on things, but we have not gotten our legal advisors
I mean,
involved.
And that issue is moot at this point because they have finally caught up to the reduction in the streetlights, which I tried to explain when we were doing streetlights. But now there's different issues. As Howie said, we should have banked a bunch in the summer. And you can't reach out and get somebody that will help you understand anything. So that's why it's important that Howie included this in the review of the different options.
No, I understand.
Which is actually something that would augur in favor of this study, which is, we need to be able to know what our electricity costs are, right? Reliably, and not, and include the concept of losing credits because of the inflexibility and impenetrability of the information that they're giving you, which is real, right? It's proving to be a real cost.
Great,
All right. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
coming in.
Thank you.
big subject.
Yeah, big subject.
Okay, we're going to move to account 2200, or was there anything else on special projects? We did have the.
There is the
assessor.
assessing, but would you,
Ron
short
has
of
been
bouncing
waiting.
around a
Yeah,
lot, would you
we-
like to take people in the room first?
Yes, I think so. So Ron is back here. Do you want to come to the podium and talk to us about road maintenance?
There you go.
This is account 2200.
So we've worked with Ron on the budget, and there's really a slight reduction, in contracted services, and a reduction in the road and street signs. The repair and maintenance budget is staying the same, and there is an increase to the compensation for the road commissioner.
Basically, Christie and I have already talked about it, and the way I see it, I can go with the budget that they got figured here, right here now. It's $114,425 for 25. I've already got through this year, and I got a little money left in my budget. And if it hadn't have been for the storms that we had to cover and remove all the brush that was beside the road, I'd have been really, could have done a few things I'd like to do. So I think if we just stick with this and we don't have the bad storms, I got a lot of roadside cleaning to do. There's a lot of trees that are really hazardous to the motor vehicles going up and down the road. And I'd like to get some of those out of the way, because people have been complaining about their mirrors are hitting on the trees and all that stuff. And these trucks today have fiberglass cabs. If you hit a mirror on it and it takes the door off, it costs a lot of money. So
that would be in your road maintenance.
yeah, that'd be on my road maintenance.
Okay, and you're good with the amount here, it sounds like.
So I'm satisfied with that.
Okay, so I think I'm going to propose that we're good with this account. Okay. So, does Ron talk to us about snow removal? I've forgotten.
Yep.
What's that?
Okay. 2210.
The snow removal, the winter.
Snow removal?
So that's a contractual situation with R.A. Weber. We're in the second year of a 3-year contract. That is going up 2.2%, the contract, and then we're kind of holding the line on salt and a slight reduction in sand.
Yeah. So this is gonna stay the same too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
This seems
This
good.
is all set.
Great job.
So is the drop in salt and sand a issue, Ron, is the drop in salt and sand an issue of price? Or is it, we're learning that the winters are milder, or?
A bit mild.
Well, we've had good luck not having to use so much, that's for sure. My shop is almost full of sand right now. I'm gonna check it out, but I don't know if I'll get time to go before I leave here today, but in the next day or two, because we just went with a new company because they beat the other company in a bid, so this was our bid year, our third year, so I might even get a chance to find out if we're gonna need any at all for a while. And the salt, they've been using a little more salt on these kind of, like the other night, we got called out about 9:30 and they went out and did all the roads, really,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Are you happy with Weber?
Oh, I'm very happy with Weber.
Okay.
I've had no issues whatsoever.
Okay.
And when do the contracts, when do you start to discuss?
They just started their third-year contract again,
This is
and
second
they have an option.
Second year.
year of
This will be the second year, right, yeah, that's true. This will be the second
Three-year.
year. And then they have another option to go to bid again if they want at a minimal raise, I think.
So after the 3 years, I
Percentage.
think we've got a clause that they could request an additional year or perhaps 2. I don't recall off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
we can evaluate the situation as we get closer to the end of the 3-year contract.
Mackin had a
My
question.
question is related to the contract. Is it a 2.2% escalator each year? Is that?
I believe it is,
There's
yes.
some formula in there.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I
it
think
was-
that's right, yeah,
We just agreed to a percentage.
yeah.
That's quite reasonable.
Well, as Ron said, the winters have changed, and you didn't have to have them come out quite as much overall last winter.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Yeah. It's just that bad storm that could land on you, and you gotta be ready,
Right.
and they have enough equipment to be really ready.
Okay.
That's something we've really needed for a long time,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. I think we can move on to capital road projects. And 9,200.
92.
You wanna add
You
in?
want me to take this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you, because you gotta add some money into this one.
Well, so, yes, you're at 9,200, and I just ask you to go to the second page, which I believe is this sheet, that shows you proposed appropriations for 2025, whether or not we're going to use or propose to use fund balance, and then what the existing reserve is. So if you look toward the bottom of that list, you'll see capital roads. We're proposing $400,000 to raise and appropriate, $200,000 from fund balance. We have over $600,000 in the account. That's gonna take us to about 1.2 million. We are planning to work on Peabody Road. This has been an ongoing capital project. Little Island was damaged in the January storm. Same for Ocean Street. We're actually working with FEMA on the plans to repair and rebuild Little Island Road and Ocean Street, so we expect to get reimbursed for those projects, but you typically have to pay and then get reimbursed through FEMA. And the Peabody Road, the town has been going back and forth with some alternative proposal to use a different type of product for this project, and no final decisions have been made yet.
Christie, what would the cost of Peabody be?
I think we're looking Originally, it was coming in around, I want to say 650 with some contingency on top of that.
Yeah.
But it's possible that figure will be a little bit less if we use this other product.
Not asphalt or whatever.
We've got a lot better bid than that, but we've got to add another contractor too, who's gonna do the ditching, the
Yeah.
culverts. And once he puts his package with that package, I think it's gonna help us save a lot of money.
So it would be an alternative to asphalt?
No, it'll be asphalt,
It'll
but
be
it's a
asphalt.
different type of asphalt.
Different type.
Okay.
Peabody Road has been on this list since I've been on this committee, which is forever. So,
Yeah, Peabody, and we held those off, I mean, actually, because Basin Point was a long road, and Peabody was a long road. Well, Basin Point gets heavily traveled, Peabody didn't, and I kind of liked Peabody Road because it looked like an old-fashioned road. The trees were bending in, and it looked good, but with all the building on it, the road just went to pieces. And I've tried to patch it and tried to patch it, and it just keeps, potholes come up. So what we've run into now is ledge. There's ledge in the road in a lot of places. So I run into a new product dealing with the person on what is it?
yeah, it was
Allstate paving. And
Allstate.
he told me, he says,
He's the new one,
Wha-
Allstate.
Yeah, Allstate. And he said, I have a product that'd be really, I think would be the best thing for Peabody Road, because we'd never have to grind it up, because there's not much ground over the ledge. Once you grind it up, then you gotta have 14 inches. So once you get 14 inches, you either gotta take 14 inches of ledge out of the road, or you gotta put 14 inches of gravel on top of everything. And depending on what you got left for soil on top of the ledge. So that would be around $170,000 to put the gravel in. So it would really pump the bill up a lot. So I'm hoping we can go with what I've suggested. And they've offered to meet because our engineer wasn't familiar with it, which I
okay.
think is good, but they'll meet and discuss it and see what we come up with. That's what really put us out of the picture this year, was not enough knowledge. Yeah.
Mackin had a question.
I guess for Christie, the gap between paying for the work and getting reimbursement, are we gonna have to finance that?
Well,
Yes.
we're, right now, by doing this, using our fund balance essentially, we're gonna,
Will that take, do you have an adequate cash, is I guess really my question. If it's like 6 months or 9 months between.
we're not really sure when we get reimbursed by FEMA, to be honest with you.
That's my
Well,
point.
the 1.2 million in funds available.
We
per
already
the-
have
per the estimate-
600,000 in the bank.
Yeah, per the estimate, is sufficient to meet the needs of Peabody Island and Ocean, right?
I would say,
Roughly.
at this point, based on what we know, but things constantly change, so we might want to use more fund balance if Peabody starts to escalate. If we decide not to use this product, then it may end up costing us some more. The whole
My
situation,
real
with
question is, do you have confidence that given a reasonable, change of like 10, 15% in cost, the town can handle it without having to go and borrow and on and on?
I believe so,
Okay.
but
Good. That-
you know, these
that's it.
projects are getting pricey, and I do want to remind everyone, the engineering is beginning to cost the town more money. So the engineering for Little Island Road is over $20,000. For Ocean Street, it's over $40,000. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is for Peabody, because we agreed to sole source with Allstate, so we weren't going to create bid documents that were going to go out to all kinds of contractors, and that was going to keep the costs down there, so.
Engineering and permitting, I mean, Ocean Street requires a lot of permits.
So these costs are rolled in, and we do the best we can estimating and getting input from the engineers. FEMA has their own calculations. They bring experts into the field. They do their calculations. We kind of say, okay, this is what we think the budgets are going to be. But it's not perfect, and, you
Are they
know.
making you build these back to a much higher standard?
They're not making us, they're incentivizing us because they're offering to pay for getting it to what it was and then additionally making it better.
That's in the shoreline zoning too, right? That's,
Oh, yeah.
Well, aren't both of them in the shoreline zone? Both Little Island? Definitely.
Yeah. So on Little Island, we did an emergency repair, but the riprap stone is too small, and it's not going to really last the way larger riprap would preserve the road there. So you do things because people needed to be able to use that road, but it was not considered a good long-term fix. And it was a reason, I think we only spent about, listen to me, it was like
12,000.
12, 14,000, but we
Yeah.
had people who were concerned they weren't going to be able to get emergency services to their homes, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that was like an emergency repair cost. But now we're talking, could be 150, 200,000 for Little Island, could be 350,000 for Ocean Street. And then we've got 650 for Peabody. I mean,
Right.
and costs are escalating, and that's a good point, Mackin,
Here's a sort of dumb question, I guess. And Jane, I saw your hand up. If you did Island Road and Ocean Road first, found out what they were, is it possible to hold off on Peabody another year? Because you ran out of money or something.
Yeah,
or,
well, we've
we're
talked about
short.
doing Peabody in 2 phases, so that might be something that we
Yeah.
can consider doing.
Well, the price that we're getting now is like about half what we thought it was gonna be, so we could do, they thought they'd have it all done this year. But, it was a new product, and it wasn't familiar with the engineers, and they just said they couldn't approve something they didn't know anything about.
Oh, great.
And so, that's a fact. Yeah, and it kind of bothered me, because I wanted that road done this year. And sometimes you just don't get what you want.
Jane, you had a question?
We don't know really how much they are going to reimburse, or they'll fully reimburse both, 2 of the roads, probably Ocean
Yeah,
but not Peabody.
no,
No.
Peabody was not impacted by
No,
that
no, that's,
storm.
that's inland, that's a normal thing that we've been doing. I've done 29 roads, I believe, since I started,
I believe it.
yeah.
I mean,
So,
in light of the,
would we get a full reimbursement, or we just don't know?
No, we're
What
pretty
did- I didn't
certain
hear you.
we would get, you don't get 100% reimbursement, so you get 75% from FEMA and 15% from the state of Maine. So the town always has to kick in 10. And as long as we're kind of following their process and procedure, we've been told that we should be getting reimbursed. But we have submitted paperwork for the April storm, which was after January, and you had a lot of trees that came down. And I don't know how many months that's been submitted, but we still have not received the reimbursement for that. So it's just, it takes a while, you know?
What started this was originally, I was under the impression that FEMA weren't even gonna be involved. They didn't have any money, nothing was gonna happen, that's what I was told. So I tried to get it brought into the recycling center, and they said, well, that would put a big burden on the town, having that stuff all ground up afterwards, trying to get rid of it. So they really didn't want it up there to the recycling center. So I says, okay. So now we'll go to Plan B. I'm just gonna hire a arborist to go in there, chip every pile of dirt, wood that Central Maine Power left under the wires, big piles of wood
Everywhere.
over all these different roads. And then all of a sudden, I get the project going, we get the estimate out, and I give it to the fire marshal, Mike Drake, and he wanted it, so I gave it to him. And then he says, well, FEMA wants to know GPS on all the points, all the roads, all the piles of wood.
Every
I said,
single
wait a
one.
minute. I said, wait a minute. First of all, when you start adding all this labor in, we've already got the estimate. They're gonna do it. If somebody wants to go in and look at it, go ahead. We'll give you a GPS coordinates on every road that's on them. And I can't remember now right off the top of my head, but there was quite a few roads that had the wood on it. And I says, and then they wanted a GPS on every stump that was missing.
Please.
I says, for somebody that wasn't gonna even be involved, they're getting pretty picky. So, I'm gonna go with this. I missed my estimate by $200. It was $12,200. And the only reason why that 200 was on that bill was because they had to write on that bill, at the receipt, when they got done and sent the bill, they had to put all the GPS on the roads, so they would make sure they knew where they were.
So we're all going to cheer when we get that first reimbursement check.
Right.
Yeah.
So Marge has a question.
I just have a quick question back on street signs. Does the town of Harpswell, do you put the street signs, the stop signs at the end of Cundy Harbor Road?
Do we put them up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Those were state.
If it's state,
Oh, which ones do you mean, town roads or state
She
roads?
said Cundy's Harbor
The end of
Road.
Cundy's Harbor under 24.
That's state, right? Yeah,
State, yeah.
yeah.
I'm looking
Anything
for- I'm
on,
looking for the flashing stop sign since nobody seems to know what stop means.
And the one that flashes
you.
before you even get there.
Yeah, that's,
Right.
just so you know that 123, on Route 24, the Mountain Road and Cundy's Harbor Road are all state aid roads. So that's out of my
out of
league.
your bellywork.
Yeah, but I have a lot of people ask me to do stuff on that. And then, when I thought there was no more questions coming from it, I get a note that the DOT asked them to talk to me about putting a mirror on a sign on 24. I said, it's their road, it's not mine. They said, well, if he doesn't mind, we don't mind. And I said, well, I don't care. Go ahead, put it up there. But I've had 2 of those requests from the DOT asking me to do it on their road.
Okay, Dave had a
Question.
question.
Christie, I mean,
Oh.
given Little Island and Ocean Road and those emergency expenses, are you comfortable with the level of the existing reserve in the uncertain world that we live in?
Well, I think if we refine some of these numbers between now and town meeting, we might ask for more fund balance to be used.
I'm just wondering if, in the aggregate, as you look to the future and the possibility that these things do happen once in a while,
That's a great question, yeah.
would you prefer to have more money in a rainy day fund for this?
The engineer has provided the estimates for all of them, and we will make sure to continue to get updated. And like Christie said, we may have to use for more fund balance, request more fund balance. Are you suggesting more appropriation?
It's, my question isn't aimed at
Right. Right.
currently planned
Kind of
expenditures.
long-term.
It's sort of a long-term view of, do we
Well,
have
I
enough in
think it's a
reserve?
great,
A couple of years.
yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's something that comes up with the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee, like how big does that reserve need to be? And, you know, currently, the way it's established, anything more than 50,000 has to go to the town meeting. So, you know, it's so hard to predict the future, but we were able to use the capital road reserve to start, like, some of the processes, like with hiring an engineer. And so we did have this reserve in place for roads. So we could try to address those situations, but I don't have a crystal ball, and
What-
would we always want more money? Sure, but we've got to be reasonable about how we approach this and how we plan for the future.
And I think that we have it's gonna be a kind of all of us know this, that this could be a big change this year on the cost of fuel, on the cost of things that might go down. That might be a big help if it works, because culverts went double when the fuel went up. All the equipment has had to be moved over the road, all the produce that's coming over the road has cost so much. I'm hoping that things will change and come down a little bit. If it doesn't, well, we want to be ready for it, and that's why Christie's trying to make sure that we understand that in case we don't have enough, we want enough in there.
Yeah, I think what we hear when we start talking about this publicly is, what is the state of Maine doing about Route 24 and 123? On 123, there's always concerns about the town line, the causeway down at Potts Point, 24, the bridges, Cribstone Bridge, which was damaged in that January storm. So what is the state doing about its projects and its funding and, looking at the future? And then we have our situation, but then, and this is the work that resiliency and sustainability is doing, is we have a lot of private roads in Harpswell. We don't accept many public roads. Like, I can't remember the last time we accepted a public road. So there are a lot of people who live on private roads. Maybe they're just private driveways, or they do serve many other homes, but they need to be thinking about what do we do? Because that's an issue that's come up at the committee level. How do we educate people in the community about what they need to be thinking about on their private roads? And what's available to them for grants and incentives, that type of thing. So it's kind of like those three biggies when you're talking about roads: state, town, and then private.
Yeah, and I asked I asked one of the engineers from the state what he thought they were gonna do, because the town road and town line is about the same as Causeway or Basin Point Road or any of them. They're all right there. And then big storms, I ran around right on that time and took pictures of all of them just to see what it looked like. I didn't see any of them really going over the road except Potts Point. It was awful. I never saw anything like that in my life. And they said, well, we're looking at you'd probably be looking at like 20 years. We'd start planning on that. And then we'll have to get out there and find out where the funds are gonna come from.
Great.
That's the short of it.
Yeah, we're not alone.
So,
Thank you, Ron, for coming and talking
Yeah.
with
Thank
us and educating us on all this.
okay, thank you very much, all of
Nice
you.
to see you're still representing the Red Sox after last season.
It was the hat that was available.
I'm just a bruising for a cruising. Cruising for a bruising.
Madam Chairman, while you're under 9,200, would you like to hear from Mary Ann Naif?
I was about to suggest that.
Heat too.
Okay. Oh, and we also have a little problem
Over
back
here
here.
for-
We're cold.
Is it- Did it flip the breaker again?
It's not something. It's not
It's
working.
cold like the school.
Flips this wall. All I gotta do is plug it into the floor plug.
Oh, okay. Oh, we could have done that. Well, except that I don't get on my knees anymore.
I don't either, mine are metal.
If I get on my knees, I don't get up without a lot of help. Thank you. Thank you.
Just like the school, freezing.
The school's freezing?
There's no heat during election.
Did you get the heat back on?
Oh, that's interesting.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
We jump in dress in layers. No heat at school when we vote, it's freezing.
The
Air
gymnasium might be hard to,
Air conditioning's running. In the gym.
okay. Mary Ann, would you please introduce yourself
Linda.
and talk to us?
I'm Mary Ann Naif, and I'm here this afternoon on behalf of the Climate Resiliency and Sustainability Committee. I believe you had received in your packet our request for this year. As you recall, 3 years ago, this is my third time, I talked to the Budget Advisory Committee, and the town instituted the Spirit account, which is the reserve account that we are using to,
Would you pause for just, I'm hitting pause for a second. We're on account 9200, line 5703.
Which there was no amount in there. She's here with a new updated
And this
request.
is.
And it was
that-
handed out on the
that's
table in
this
front
one?
of, yep,
We got this just before the meeting?
just before the meeting.
Okay, so we're catching up with you, Mary Ann.
and Dave, I think you've been here in the past when I've been up, so I'm not a complete stranger about this. Okay, great. So, what I did put forward is, we've had the plan in effect now for 2 years, going into the third year. And we are back this year to bring the account back up to $100,000, which was the amount we had talked about. through this time, we have been fortunate enough to receive a number of grants that we have used funds from this account as match and allowed us to apply. Part of it also, we were just talking about some of the FEMA issues and the town dock. Christie contacted me a while ago and said that FEMA would, I think you said pay.
I keep saying we expect to get reimbursed.
We would expect to get reimbursement if the town would rebuild, taking resiliency in account and making it more resilient for future floods. We were able, with the fund, to give Christie some money. Because what has to happen, of course, is, as she's mentioned, the town will not get repaid for that $10,000 for quite a while. So basically, the fund is the way I laid it out. I tried to show you the order in which we received money from the town, the order in which we've been, I can't say paid it out, because the thing with this is, we got the Abner Point grant in October of 2023. That is just finishing now. It's supposed to be paid out by the end of the year, but I don't think Terry's gotten a bill for it yet. So what I tried to show here is everything that's been committed and will come due to bring us down to a balance, with all of this taken into consideration, of $76,000. I'm here today to ask the Budget Advisory Committee to request at town meeting $24,000 to bring us back up to the 100.
And are you happy with the target of 100?
We've been through this before.
And you have the most impossible task of trying to project needs.
Well, this has started to come up more and more. And we started a conversation about this at our last meeting, and because just as various committees now are looking for some funding as a reserve, they're asking maybe we should include making this higher. This is a much bigger conversation for today than for today. But I feel comfortable, we have determined as a committee, we feel comfortable with this amount because of the way it's being used right now. If we're going to be used more extensively, then I think we have to reconsider how we construct this. But right now, it's funds to handle projects, mostly planning projects, that have to do with resiliency and building back better. Interestingly, most of these are planning grants that come through. We had the opportunity in the spring, the state was offering after the storms, construction grants. And as I mentioned in the note, we applied for 2 grants totaling $1,002,000, $200,000, to raise Lookout Point and Garrison Cove Road landings. And that was a construction grant of which they were paying 95%. The fund allowed us to provide the 5% match for that project, but we didn't get the grant. But I think it just shows how the ability to be nimble and flexible when these projects come up out of the blue.
Hugely important.
Yeah, that's great.
I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
None from me.
Mary Ann, maybe just one thing, on the back page of your handout,
Yes.
you indicate, this caught my attention today when I got the handout. The very first bullet point was costs associated with exploring the potential of a town solar array. So I just think the town and the budget committee ought to consider, is this where we should go for the consultant and utilize this reserve? And then if we use it in 2024, or 2025, excuse me, then you would be requesting it be replenished in 2026, as opposed to putting 24 in here and another 12 in for the committee. So just something for you to think about. You
So you
following
would be
me?
adding more money?
No, I
Instead
would
of
be
24
suggesting,
Suggesting we add more money right here?
no, I suggest that you not
Add more.
Add
have
more.
the 12,000 for the consultant, that you recommend the town consider taking it
Taking it
out
out
of an
of this one.
existing reserve.
Which takes her down to 88,000.
Assuming all these things, yeah.
Yes,
Come
it
to
does.
fruition. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You said it very well, Linda.
That math I handled. That's what he was throwing out, kilowatts per hour or acre or whatever.
Because when we say that we have this reserve to use for things like this, then I think we ought to consider using it
Yeah.
for things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does the committee feel about that?
Jane?
Oh, Jane, thank you.
Just one comment that I'd like to make. Can you hear me? I have to get this right on my mouth. The first paragraph below the reserve account table, that these funds that have been spent so far, $34,000, have generated $196,000 in grants, more than 5.5 times.
Oh,
So
that's
I
great.
think we need to congratulate both the Resilience Committee and the fact the town has set up this fund, that we can respond, because the timelines for these grants are very short. Without these, we wouldn't have been able to get them.
Thank you.
And it's interesting, we now, with the help of this fund, have completed engineering studies and plans for the cost to upgrade 5 of the town's most vulnerable roads, Basin Point Road being one of them, which was our first one, but it wasn't out of this fund. So that it puts the town in a position to know, as we go forward and start thinking about how all of these projects are going to be paid for, you have some numbers that you can use in your thinking as you try to plan.
Did you get any reason for why the 2 construction projects weren't selected? Does it depend on the candidate pool and the other
Yeah,
projects and,
And the town planner told us we were reaching.
yeah, okay. I mean,
I'm
'Cause I
curious, why were we reaching? This is Lookout Point and Garrison Cove?
Yes, because it was.
statewide.
It was a main DOT transportation. It was designed more to pay for the damage to roads during the January storms.
Got it.
And this land, yeah.
Those were ongoing issues that we had had before.
Yeah.
Oh,
They told us that we could apply. I talked to them, and they said it was fine. But we had also, and then in the answer, we got that Harpswell has been very fortunate to have received a number of grants so far.
So don't ask for any
spreading the
more.
Thank you.
Yes.
But we keep coming back.
So my question for Christie is, what would you prefer? Which bucket this 12,000 should come out of?
I mean, I think we're not spending it rapidly. As you can see, we still have $110,000 in the account as we sit here today.
Right.
So I think these are wonderful projects, and we've been able to position ourselves to get these grants. But I don't know that we need to raise the 24 here and the 12 somewhere else in the budget. I mean, I'm being, more frugal. If we knew there was a major project or grant opportunity that you thought we were going to go after, I think we're going to have a hard time on the construction area unless we're going after grants that are more working waterfront related. Because if you're competing with all these towns for a DOT grant, they're going to look at where are the major transportation routes, where do they need to put their money, the biggest bang for the buck type of thing. So I think we're going to perform better in the construction area when it's more targeted. I don't know if Mary Ann has a
I do have a thought as you're
comment.
talking about that. The causeway over to Potts Point was talked about. And the state has no money, I understand, to do much with that. I suggest that as we start putting more pressure on the state to do something more permanent there and take care of it, they will come back to the town and say, well, if you're willing to put some money into it, we could do something. So that might be an occasion, because this had come up in the past, I believe, on Cundy's Harbor Road years ago. Becomes a shared project. This fund could be a basis for something like that.
What are you thinking is needed at Potts Point?
I was
the
told
causeway.
that there's a lot of work to be done on the causeway from the flooding. I haven't been down there, but,
I'm down there all the time,
yeah.
just yesterday.
And the state hasn't done anything yet?
The railings are kind of mushed against the road. Any holes in the road have been fixed caused by the flooding by the state.
What
But it
about-
hasn't been raised or anything.
What about some resiliency construction there? DOT is now considering sea level rise as they're planning new projects and accounting for it.
Yeah.
So here again, I'm just,
Right, the
These
water
are
was
thoughts.
completely over it
right.
in January. Yeah.
When this happens, my understanding on roads is,
For a couple days.
right, the roadbed gets soaked, and the more this happens, it freezes, the roadbeds kills, if it's not a good roadbed, the road falls apart.
Okay.
So just talking from the same point of view we do on all our roads, I would think that that road is not going to fare as well the next time we have another southeast storm in winter with freezing water. But can't spend state money, can we?
We can
So
try.
a long-term, a more long-term.
Yeah. But
would be
to
have
Christie's
more
point,
money well, would be a lot more money would be needed if we were going to share this responsibility with the state.
Likely, and I think we would have time, if we were going to work together on a project like that, to really know. I tend to want to know more about the project and the
Oh, yeah.
concrete costs before.
Right.
but I will say, Christie, going back to our fund,
Okay.
we are going to pay $10,000 out immediately for your FEMA project. So that's going to go away from the fund. That's part of the 24,
Right. But we expect to reimburse.
right? The Lowell's Cove and the Abner Point Road projects funds will be spent out probably by town meeting.
Oh, Lowell's and Dingley, because you've already spent Abner and Bethel.
We haven't spent Abner and definitely yet.
Well, I mean, it's supposed
I
to.
mean,
they're
they're all
supposed to bill us.
potential. They're
Yeah,
all committed funds.
Yeah.
But as Terry says, I keep looking at this account and it's still got a lot of money in it. Knowing how these projects are going to finish up shortly, I think we will be spending out a fair amount by town meeting.
Yeah, and I think my point, maybe I'm not making it very well, it's hard for me to say, put in so much money when it's sort of nebulous about some of these larger projects.
Right.
I'd like to know what they are, what the cost is, but I understand the flexibility of this reserve, and it's been helpful in these areas,
I know,
absolutely.
and that's what you and I discuss all the time.
But I was trying to respond to the question I was getting.
Sure.
Okay, Jane had something, and then Marge.
I don't know if this is relevant to the Potts Point, but I just want to remind us that this fund, the select board is authorized up to $50,000 only. So when we're talking about construction projects or major projects, those are going to have to go either to a regular or a special town meeting
Right,
anyway. So we
right.
don't want to build
Some
this
sort of
on
referendum.
the
Right.
assumption that we're going to be making larger
Right.
expenditures.
Right. So thank you for adding that. And Marge?
For Mary Ann, this 24,000 came a lot easier than trying to sell this course the first time around, so congratulations. I said this 24,000 came a lot easier than the first time that Mary Ann was trying to get 50,000 and sell it to this committee. It was
It's-
like blood, sweat, and tears for her, so.
It's nice that you can realize some savings. It makes it so easy to come back the
Well, it's
next
very-
year.
I mean, this proves that it's worth having, and, and I understand grants and having the money up front and all of that, so I can easily sell this $100,000 for no problem.
Thank you.
Agree.
Right.
And it seems which bucket it comes from should be an administrative decision
Yeah.
as opposed to a budget committee decision, because
Yeah.
You can, you'll be doing consensus on this next week, so why don't we come back with
We
our
can come back.
recommendation for your conversation and not
Right.
continue on it at this time?
Right, okay.
Sounds good.
Great, we're good.
Thank you very much.
Marianne.
Do you have any other questions?
Mary Ann,
And I also see in the back of the room, Chuck Perot to talk to us about the recycling center and the transfer station.
So Chuck, would you like to start with your capital project next door, since they're already on 9,200, and then you can move to your operations?
Oh, okay.
So in 9,200, what line?
I don't have that sheet, though.
give us a reference, Terry.
It is 9,200, 5529.
Okay,
We
got
have
it.
about 800,000 in the reserve. We're asking for another 200,000, but the project is estimated at about 800,000.
I think it was 840 last time we looked at it, roughly, on the high end.
And we'll be putting that out to bid soon, so we'll know that for sure, but we have asked for an additional 200. But he can
And
give you
that's sort of, oh, sorry, he's going to talk to us.
give you an update on that project.
Okay.
When are we going to bid, Chuck? We haven't heard from Will for a month.
So I'm Chuck Piero, I'm the recycling center manager. Wow, that thing's loud. Sorry. Okay.
Well, it's good for the recording.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's weird here, though,
Another Red Sox fan.
and occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so next year, this is the phase 2 of the renovation project next door. First phase was parking lot improvements, safety improvements, and the hoppers. Phase 2 is the actual tackling of the building, retrofitting the outside, updating the roof so it's actually code compliant. It'll be able to handle snow load and a solar array if the town ever chooses to go that route. We're gonna update the entire electrical system, go from, I believe it's a 440 system to a 660. We'll have direct 3-phase down to the compactors, which now we have to do with a rotophaser. We have to create our own 3-phase power currently. And the entire building will basically be gutted of old abandoned electrical boxes. It's, it's a 45 years old now, and every time there was a change, they just put a padlock on the box and put a new box beside it. So we had one engineer that came through and he said that was the most padlocks he'd seen in one building in a long time. So we have set a record with Grohl Palmer. But basically, we're gonna be updating, the plumbing is fairly straightforward and simple. The break room will get a refresh, the bathroom will get a refresh, my office will get a minor, refresh. But basically, new roof, new outside. The building will actually be insulated now. It's never been insulated, which is kind of limited its possible future use. With the old incinerator there was never a need to, because the building was always 500 degrees. But since that has been gone for over 20 years now, we've, you're limited to, it's like a tuna can in the wintertime, it's really cold in there. And the big thing that I think me and all the staff are really looking forward to is having actual lights that work in the building. Especially this time of year, about 3 o'clock on in the afternoon,
Yeah.
you have to have a flashlight. There's really hardly any light inside the building. The plan, and the last time I talked to them, the lighting system and all that, is gonna be a major upgrade for that building, and in the future, if the town ever uses to use it for other uses or add uses to that facility, the building will be ready and available, it'll be up to snuff to be able to do that, multi-roles, and if that is ever adopted. But we're looking at, I had a walkthrough with the engineering firm, they've been over there about 3 times, once a month lately. Mainly crews doing the final measuring. They go in there with a laser, they're taking the actual dimensions where the beam setup is. They're getting the exact CAD drawing, basically, of the inside layout of that frame, because we're gonna be reusing the frame and rehanging everything off of that thing. So, it's kind of just a big erector set when you really look at it from a distance. And, that is beneficial to the town, because we're not gonna have to go build a ground-up building. We can skin it down, basically just retrofit the skeleton that's there. So they've been doing a lot of measuring, that type of thing. The last time I talked to Will and an Allied representative, they were talking as soon as June, possible, a start date. more likely fall to late fall for a start date of 25. Which is a bit disappointing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because this has been kicked down the road multiple years. And now we're looking at, you know, if it gets to the point where we have to put it off that far, I'd almost rather kick it to late fall, get through the summer season, the busiest part of the
Yeah.
season, and, you know, if they're gonna work in the cold, they're gonna do it one way or the other. So, you know, and they're talking anywhere from 6 to 10 months to get this project done. The last time they mentioned it, granted, I don't know if that seems a long time to do what they're talking about doing. If they have a competent crew there, I don't, but again, it's all lining up. You know,
The
one
right
GC is gonna have to line up everybody, the electrician, you know, and certain things are gonna have to be done. You know, the electricity is gonna have to be disconnected from the walls. It kinda hangs on the skeleton for the most part, which is good. But there's gonna be you know, they'll have to have an electrician come in and do X amount of work before they can even, you know, do other parts. It's really gonna be, I'm glad I'm not the one
A lot
orchestrating
of
it.
coordination.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be down there with a hard hat laughing sometimes, I think, at the way they're going. They're gonna be running around with their heads cut off, I think. It's a big project, but it's a worthwhile project, I think, so. But we're looking forward to it. The staff is, I am, and I'm looking forward to the day that it's done. At this point, this has been a slog, and I appreciate, you know, your support and staff support, and the select board support in getting this to this point. We just need to get over the hump and get it done.
With the electrical upgrades, are you gonna have a generator?
That's an option.
So we've parsed out some of the things in this initial, in the final bid, we parsed it out to a list of options. The generator is now considered an option. The solar array is considered an option. I think those were the two big ones. There's also a heating component. If we choose to heat the building at some point, we can retrofit it with heat tubes that go down through the middle. So that also is an option. So basically, heat, generator, and the solar array are all separate items that are optional, that we could either do later on, or we could add to this if you know, things look like they're rolling along and we wanted to, you know, do this or that, and there's still funds left over, we could probably add an option if we wanted to. It just depends how smooth it goes and what the bid actually comes in at.
Okay, so, and I was about to ask, the 800,000 is a ballpark.
It's a current estimate, yes. And this estimate's been as high as 1.2 and as low as 585, I think, was the lowest. And we're settling in right here. We're probably benefiting a little bit from being this far removed from COVID now. If we had tried to do this 2 years ago, we probably would have gone bankrupt. It was crazy.
So the engineer puts together very detailed reports.
Yes.
So the September latest update had the total project costs, separate the options list. They give a low to a high range, and it's $645,000 to $802,500.
Okay.
So obviously, we're hoping towards the lower side,
Sure.
but
Of course.
We're probably gonna be, if I had to guess, somewhere, not quite in the middle, but probably a little above the middle mark of that, I would think would be a reasonable landing point.
So the 200,000 request is for
it could be for the
contingency,
options, it
or
could
the
be if we come in high.
engineering?
Well, that 800 is including engineering. And there's also other needs at this facility. You have equipment, you have, so we have to have this,
Okay.
some available
So this
funds for other
includes
stuff.
things like the backhoe and so
Yes,
forth,
yes,
okay.
this is for that whole facility,
Yep,
this
good.
reserve. But we do appear to have enough funding for this project, and that 200,000 can be some options and/or other items that would be needed.
Okay. Marge?
The generator in this part of the world seems like not anything but necessary. So why do you not think?
Well, they just closed down.
So, well, you know, that's two different subjects. So the generator that we would need over there, it gets a little bit complicated. It's probably the size of a 3/4 of a school bus. It's gonna have to provide three-phase power, and not just regular power. It'll have to have its own fuel source that basically is a belly tank that hangs underneath this thing, which restricts where we can put it. So the only logical place to put it would eliminate all the employee parking. So it gets complicated fast over there, and when you start adding in EPA and DEP, and where you can have that amount of diesel fuel, you know, it gets complicated fast as far as that. And the price tag on it is probably gonna be somewhere in the $80,000 range by the time you get it all installed.
Okay.
80,000 for completion?
For the fuel system, the building, when it's renovated, will have provisions for a generator. The electrical system will be built, so we'll be able to add a generator if we choose to. It'll also be built in a way we'll be able to add inverters, and it'll be able to accept a solar array if we choose to do that also. We're kind of doing that, you know, doing like, almost consider like a rough-in. So we'll be able to add those systems later on if we so choose, rather than have to go back and rip apart brand-new systems to accommodate those things. So they're kind of in the planning, but not going to happen.
Can I follow up?
Yes. Go ahead.
The three things that you talked about, the heat, the solar, and the generator.
Yep.
If you could only choose one of those, what is your priority?
Is that his question?
For me,
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of putting a generator over there.
Okay.
I don't, I think,
Right
and
now,
this might be the wrong way of thinking, but I think sometimes the expectations of people in town are a little ridiculous. I think we saw that with past plowing contracts, that type of thing. Everybody needs to, you know, take a breath once in a while and realize if you don't have power at your house, we probably don't have it there. And that place uses a lot of electricity. We don't have power, we're just not gonna be able to be open. We work around power outages quite effectively over
Yeah,
there.
you have.
We have to have about 4 hours, and if we were going to go, let's say we were gonna lose power and we knew we were gonna lose it for, well, we lost it for 4 days back in 17. It takes about 4 hours to get that place so we can move a 50-yard empty from the demo down, set up a line, and we would take in trash around the backside of the building with a forklift, and that's very effective. The only thing we ask is that you hold onto your recycling and bottles and cans.
Which
is-
happened one day last summer.
Which is the clean stuff, and we get rid of the yucky stuff. We will take the compost still, and we'll take all your trash as far as that. But it takes about 4 hours to get that up and running, and if we're down for multiple days, it's worked out well in the past. I don't think it's, you know, too much to ask people to hold on to the clean stuff.
That's a very good explanation, so thank you for that.
Mackin?
Makes great sense.
Yep.
Yep, thank you.
Could I ask a sort of an operating question?
Yep.
If I've done my arithmetic right. Your fees through October were about 308,000.
Okay, we're not on that yet, I don't think.
It's on this sheet on 2,000. And I just sort of taking the opportunity, and we spend about 395, which would suggest we're about, $88,000 in the
I
hole.
still don't think we're there. I'm sorry. We're discussing the,
No, I asked if I could ask an operating question.
well, we're going to get to operating in a minute.
All right.
But we'll all get there at the same time. Right now, we're talking about the capital projects, is my understanding.
That's correct.
Okay,
So you had your choice of three. You said the generator's probably not gonna be your number one choice.
I don't think any of them are necessary.
Heating or, okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't put my credit card down on any of them right now. It's all options.
I love your answer with respect to the generator. I think it's just
I do too.
It's, you know,
great answer.
90% of the town will look at you and go, oh, okay, yeah, no problem, this, that, the other thing. We have 10% that have temper tantrums, and we know who they are, and we just expect it.
Okay,
I mean, I'm at that point, I've been there 10 years, I know who they are.
are we good on this one? Thank you, Chuck,
problem.
for going over this with us.
Yep.
And we
I don't want-
hope that it all gets done in 2025.
I do too.
Okay, so now we're going to back up to 2,000. Give us a second to get there.
Okay.
And this budget has not increased significantly, I don't think. And Mackin has a question about fees.
Well, you've heard my preface, and
Well,
I'd just like to,
Start to the beginning.
all right. According to 24, expended about 395, and you took in 308.
Okay.
And that leaves the town on the hook for about $88,000.
So,
And so the question is fundamentally, are we charging all you can for the various
Yes.
services you're providing?
yes.
And is there any room to adjust? upwards?
Not at this time.
We explored this in detail last year.
I go through everything this time of year when I do my budget. I go through and I have 4 sheets of capital maintenance, capital expense, all those things, and I track all my equipment, I track everything, and then I have one specifically for fees that I track also. Last year, I'm not sure if we did it at this meeting or not, but we had to, was it last year? It was this year that we raised the fee up top right there.
It was a year ago last.
Yeah.
Well, we've done it almost every year lately, to
yeah.
a certain degree. And it's just because we had back-to-back years of 30% increases on trucking and,
Remember,
disposal. And we've had to, cover that. And we still don't cover, at 175 per ton, we still don't cover 100% of everything. And we never really have with that fee. But that fee seems to be, at an equilibrium right now. It's comparable to West Bath, which is also run by Casella. That's their main facility.
right.
So we try to stay, in an equilibrium with them, surrounding towns. We're kind of right in the middle of the pack, price-wise. And through the end of this contract, which 25 will be the last year of this contract, I think that fee can stand pat and we should be fine. When I first took over, we weren't collecting as much up top.
Right.
And we've slowly have been kicking the businesses up top the way they're supposed to be, having people take up, even if it seems minuscule, things that are actually supposed to go up top, not down below, and be thrown in the hoppers. Since I've been there, we've had someone out there almost all day long, at least one person, if not 2 at times, fending off people wanting to throw mattresses and couches in the hoppers. We've had that happen, actually. But, I think having the staff in the position that they're in and having slowly weaned people off of the holes in the wall, those have been gone now for almost 5 years. Those were heavily abused. The last time we had those holes totally open, it was 148 or so thousand pounds of material that got put through those 3 little holes in the wall. And we still take some stuff. If someone comes in with just a frying pan, something like that, Donette or John or I or whatever, we'll take it for them. But the amount of money we save on propane, not hauling stuff up the hill with a forklift anymore, is amazing. But I think last year we were at 13,000 pounds compared to 148,000 pounds at the peak of it. So I think the town at this point is been weaned off of that. We sent a lot of people up top with people that's being sent up with the correct material that belongs up top, which helps out dramatically. We've kind of altered the mindset, and people know to just go up the hill with things now.
Well, it's a question worth asking, because it's getting to be a serious number.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, second or third year, once we really started getting, trying to get people to be doing the correct thing, that we started to basically be covering about 50%. And I know we can't look at it that way, but I look at it as if my budget is $200,000 and we collect $100,000 in fees, then we've covered roughly 50% of that year's budget. Although that fees go to the next year, I understand that concept. But looking at it from a calendar point of view, and we've been able to do that up until probably the last 2 years, because the increases have been so much on disposal and trucking that but this year we've made I think must be getting close to being 50%, I would think.
Well, you've got to look at recycling and transfer. So if you
Right.
add the 2 of them together, it's about 720,000. And this revenue that was towards the end of October, so there was still 2 months to go,
Yeah.
was at 308,000.
So we may be close, we may be somewhere around the 50%, somewhere in that area as far as that, which I think is probably a reasonable expectation.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Do you have anything in your crystal ball with regard to what Casella might look like in the new contract?
I'm a bit disappointed in them. Communication has been extremely lacking. Throughout doing my budget, I tried to get a representative that knew something about us. You can't find one. When this last contract was made, it was made by a district representative. No, I don't have a local one anymore. Not to my knowledge. If I do, nobody can put a name on them, and they won't return a phone call. So, my thought is that, the main problem we have is Casella is close, and they are all-inclusive. So Casella not only handles their own disposal and recycling, they handle recycling for waste management. So other companies, when they bid to handle Harpswell, are still gonna have to deal with Casella to a certain degree, a lot of them. So, the fact that Casella handles their own disposal, handles their own recycling, have their own truck fleet, and their own dumpster fleet, makes it hard to beat them price-wise and service-wise. I have no complaints with the service on the ground. I have a bit of an issue with the office. And that's something I've been working on, and they had a pretty nasty, well, not nasty, but sternly worded email that I sent out not too long ago. I'm not gonna say nasty, but not being responded to and being a customer is never a good thing.
And on the flip side of that, we've seen positive results here at the town office. It used to be, their billing would be 3 months behind. We
Yes.
never could get current. We now have a strong relationship with
So
the
I-
Scarborough office, where we are now getting invoices within the first few days of the following month. And when there is an issue, somebody is addressing it. And so I thought we had that sales rep that was following up with you, Chuck. So I was unaware that she stopped following up with you. But I think we could have a conversation with our Scarborough contact, because that has proven very strong for us here
No, as far as-
regarding billing.
Billing and on the ground, I don't have any issues with them at all. And dispatch is another arm of it that is, they'll bend over backwards to help us out, and they've really helped us out in the past. We got really overwhelmed this spring with storm damage and that type of thing. They were able to, schedule multiple hauls, whereas, they're used to doing one. They took 4 out one day, so that's, they had 2 drivers dedicated to us just to get us cleaned out, so it's always helpful. And we work well back and forth together. My issue right now is an actual account representative that will handle not only the money end of it, but if I had something on the ground or a problem with a truck driver or something like that, I don't have that person right now, apparently, that I can reach out to. And a lot of it comes down to they've consolidated, like all companies have, to the point of 2 of my vendors now are in Colorado. They used to be in New Hampshire. So when I make a phone call or when I have an email, I can't get someone to eventually make a road trip to Harpswell anymore unless they get on a plane. So, that type of consolidation, directly hampers customer service in a lot of ways. And I think sometimes it's short-sighted when they do that. But to answer your question, I think, we'll go out to bid, of course, with as many vendors as possible. But like I said, when you have one company that controls a certain part of the waste stream and is all-inclusive with everything that you need to happen, if you go to some of these vendors, you have to not only have them, but you have to have a separate contract. If we were to break out with a certain company, we'd have a separate contract, or it would be in their contract, but it would be a separate trucking company altogether. That's not, it's a partner of theirs, but it's not theirs. The size of the dumpsters are 50% less than what we currently have. So not only would be, parts of the contract might look good, but when you have to triple your trucking to stay as cleaned out as we are, that doesn't work. And some of these companies are further away. We would be quoted up to $1,000. This year would be $1,000 per haul if we had gone with Waste Management to haul material to Norwich Walk. It's $300 a haul through Casella. So
Huge.
it just location, logistics, all that stuff like that. They're just a complete package, and it's hard to beat them on paper.
Sounds good. Last spring, there was some sort of discount for taking brush up to the transfer station.
I think we did 2 weeks.
Oh, it seemed like forever.
It did to us too.
I bet. I forgot what it was, 50% off or something
I
like
think we did 50%. Yep.
How is that reimbursed to you or to your account, or was it?
It's not.
It's not.
When
That
something,
wasn't-
when,
That, there wasn't anything to do with FEMA or MEMA?
not
or-
that I'm aware of. If the
Just
town
something
needs
nice
to,
that the town did?
if the town needs to dispose of something, or if there's a cleanup day from Leave It Harbor or something like that, we track it all, but it directly affects my budget, and it's not reimbursed to my budget. So we absorb, all the, it's nice to have those cleanup days, this and anything, but it does directly affect this budget.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the big thing this year, the big stressor was on the transfer station budget, because we're about 250 tons ahead of, more than last year at this time. And that, directly correlates with the back-to-back storms in January.
Yeah.
And also, I think our wood grinding budget this year was considerably more, but again, that's such a cheap alternative to hauling it out of here. Chipping it on site and hauling it is way more, it's, I think it's $65 a ton compared to, $130 a ton plus trucking. So.
Where does
it's
that
a-
go?
That goes, you're gonna ask me that.
No, it's all right, it's all right.
There's a
Just
landfill with a
idle
funky
question.
name that I'd never heard of that it goes to, and it's used to cap the landfill as they fill it. They actually put about like a 10-foot cap of this material on top of there.
Okay.
This is chip,
Chipped wood, yes.
chipped, not brush, but chipped demo.
Brush goes to, this year brush went to biomass. So in years past, it's actually gone towards like the stuff you use in your gardens, that type of thing you get at Lowe's. This year it went to biomass. So it all depends on what is available. What's the best deal for them and for us?
That brings up another question. I know we're not supposed, and I learned this last year, put invasive plants in there.
Don't do that, Linda.
I don't. But I see them there all the time.
We can't stop it.
Okay. But
And if it's
people
going to
know
biomass,
what
that's a good thing.
invasive plants are?
A lot of people don't,
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna lecture people on it.
okay. I just thought maybe a sign.
If people come up and are trying to do the right thing, then we'll guide them and
Right,
we
okay.
show them, we
I
have
didn't know
a
if you wanted
flyer.
a sign, please no invasive plants or something.
I'm not gonna tackle that monkey, no.
Okay. Okay.
Since it all gets ground up and basically just goes away, I'm not overly concerned with it. As long as it's not around the town, but it's in one location up there, I think we consider that a win.
Okay. Until it comes back in somebody's bark mulch.
Just yours.
That's why I don't have bark mulch. Okay, thank you, Chuck. Any more questions for Chuck? That's great. Thank you for coming.
Is that all of it? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Thank you. I know
Thank
you
you.
had to wait a little while.
No problem. Thanks.
Okay, see ya.
Okay, so I'm going to go to 12:30, because we have a representative from Cranberry Horn Hill here, our cemetery, to talk to us. Kimberly, is it PL? You're going to say it again? Pila, okay, is going to speak to us about what's going on over there. Can you give us a second to get to that page in our book? Sure. It's 12:30.
I think we'll be
Okay, you think it'll be okay.
We're ready, I think.
okay.
I think our question was, we understand that, I'm sorry, that there's, the town is supporting with a certain amount for veterans' graves and an additional amount to help with mowing. And then you had asked for another amount, which we weren't sure what your plans were for that.
Oh, boy. Do I need to do this, or can everybody?
Well, they can hear you, but there's a live streaming, I think, going on,
Oh,
so
my.
they're gonna wanna pick that up.
How far away? I'm not familiar with this. At the time I submitted it, I wasn't sure. I was still green. I didn't know what else to expect. So I asked for the extra $1,000. I have since spoken with Mike Bishop with Bishop Landscape. They're the ones that do the mowing for us. And right now, so I had talked to Terry and I says, well, let's just bring it back down to 6,000 then.
But I guess now I am going to go with my first proposal for 7,000, because I've spoken with Mike. Right now, what he does is he mows 5 times a year, $1,200 per mow for $6,000 a year. I know I have felt long before I took this that, unlike your article, Mackin, that I felt that the cemetery should be mowed more than what it is. At the time, I didn't know how many times, and now I know it's 5. So Mike and I talked. There's some areas that don't need to be mowed continuously. Some areas of the grass are more moist, and it's more so down in the back, like where the Dowdy property, where their house is, on the newer side. So there's that one little area that could use more mowing, and then there's some areas that could use more trimming. So I would like to still maintain the 5 times a year for $6,000, and then ask for one more mow, but we'll break up that one more mow of 1,200 into, okay, maybe mow over here, but clip more over here. So bringing the total for the mowing to 7,200. But I'll still ask for just the 7.
Okay, so it's all for mowing.
All for mowing until I get more of my feet wet and figure out what else is going on.
Mackin.
Kim, could you give us a flavor of how the organization is going and sort of what you see ahead as you take charge and really get it going? Because you've gone through a huge upheaval, and now you're bringing it back together.
Undertaking, yes. I'm still a little green right there. Sandy Swallow is going to be the treasurer, and George Swallow is still going to be the marker. And, and I have spoken with Jerry York. He does Orr's Island Cemetery. And
When you say does it, that's the mowing over there?
excuse me, no, he's the president, president over there.
Okay.
This is my next question.
Okay.
So when I first started talking to George and Sandy about this, you'll have to laugh, but we were at his kitchen table, and he brought out all these little 8x10 pieces of paper and made a big map of the cemetery. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Is there a way to make something bigger? And he said, yeah, they do make a software program. So then I got online to research that, and there's many, and I was very overwhelmed. So I called Jerry York, and who deals also with Jack Sylvester. And he spoke with Jack, and they are willing to give us their software program. So we're going to put together a meeting after the holidays. And I have David Perrier. He's our librarian. And this is right up his alley, mapping. And so he's going to take charge of the software program that is going to allow us to know exactly who is where. And then he's going to help build.
I'm only laughing because I'm affiliated with a cemetery that doesn't know who is where. For the same reason that you're talking about. Yeah.
So, and help create a website. David does all this type of stuff. I looked on the Orr's Island Cemetery website. I don't know if anybody's ever looked at that.
Yes.
That is a beautiful site. You know, list out names, and then you can click on pictures.
Yeah.
So I would like to do what they do, with the help of David.
Really, the sort of behind my question was that the 3 cemeteries do a lot of the same things. You do accounting, you have to file a tax return, there may be other things that I'm unaware of, state mandates and one thing or another. And seeking ways to do things together, which you've just talked about, strikes me as huge.
Oh, okay.
Question- oh.
Is that a good thing or?
It's a good thing.
Oh, okay.
good thing.
You know, to hire one accountant and one tax person, and that, as opposed to having three.
But there are
things of that-
5 cemeteries, Megan.
5 cemeteries, things of that sort.
Details.
That will just take time to explore
Yeah.
parts and what people are willing to do and so on and so forth, but it's an objective.
I know I would like to be able to have things filed here, like just documents, for example, you know, the EIN number situation. I finally reached the IRS after probably an hour and a half on hold. And there was 2 numbers that we found. And one Camden Bank confirmed that they have on file. So when I spoke with IRS, I gave them the 2 numbers. One number that began with a 45, she said they have no record of any activity that she can see. The other number, she said, I have to speak to the person that created this. Well,
That person's not
Is-
available.
probably now in the cemetery, right?
A polite way to put it.
So the IRS person says, just start over, start fresh. So I am going to be doing that, applying for a new one. I already have an accountant, and he's walking me through everything. And apparently, because we're nonprofit, alls we have to do, unless you make a certain amount of money, you just have to file a certain, can't remember the name of the form, just a form. So he'll take care of that for us.
Is he volunteering his help with that? I'm getting into the money part.
Yeah. I don't know yet. Well, I can have an answer for you later.
Great.
I just think it's wonderful that you're doing this. I think it's
So
wonderful that you're
Thank you.
rebuilding this. I'm the one who called Christie and said, that cemetery needs to be mowed. I have this thing, if the cemetery's not mowed, it reflects on the whole town. And that's always been my.
We need to talk.
What Kim was referring to is there was a story in the New York Times that cemeteries
Yeah.
across the land now are giving up mowing
I saw that.
and are
I
going
read that.
back to being, quote, wild.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
Yeah,
if you watch any of these British TV shows, the
We're not
cemetery.
there.
like
No,
wildflowers.
the grass is, a foot high.
Yeah,
And the
They're
stones are
not-
very old
They're also
looking.
not sloppy. It's just a trend that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
well, I don't like that trend. It actually even gives it a scary look. You know what I mean? So I'm more for the keeping it manicured and Martha Stewarty.
I'm with you, because I think the rest of
Okay, a
this was
question I have is, what are you looking at for fundraising? I know this is early in the process.
I'm going to be speaking with Daddy, who happens to be right across the street from where I live.
Who?
Daddy Bianchi?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
She's, I guess, helped with fundraisers in the past. So, going to be speaking with her on what we could do.
Okay. And I'm thinking of what we were talking about earlier today, grants. Are there any grants that help with these things? You don't know that yet.
That
either.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
And charging fees, too. Is that something
Oh,
the cemetery does or not?
Good question. I'm sorry.
No, that's a,
You know, Orr's
For
Island,
visitors or residents?
Orr's Island is very explicit, I think, if you look at the website of what
Yeah.
they charge for this, that.
Okay.
we did convene a meeting here with Kim and Jerry York and some other folks that were interested in making sure Cranberry Horn Hill remained an organization. So I think that was really helpful to give you an idea of the kinds of things that needed to be done. I do want to say at this point, the town contributes to these 5 private cemeteries, including Cranberry Horn, but for the other 4, the town contributes just kind of per military grave. And so I think at some point, the Cranberry Horn Hill, organization does need to think about what model you're going to kind of have. Like, I know Jerry York talked to you about kind of the membership model, where people actually pay sort of a dues each year. they're the only cemetery of the Harpswell cemeteries that does that.
Yeah.
But you kind of need a financial model to, I think, so that, you know, the other cemeteries are not asking for the full amount to mow. And so how are you going to make up that, you know, going forward? That kind of,
And, yeah, I was gonna
That
say-
gap would be roughly $3,000,
right,
$3,500.
yeah,
It's about 4,000,
yeah, about 4,
3,000 for the
Right.
veterans' graves,
right.
is the calculation I have. So,
Doing a great job.
Yeah.
I'm trying,
and
and
does it really need it 5 times? The cemetery that I'm involved in, I'd be surprised if they do it 3 times a year.
really?
Now, it is built in an area with a low moisture content. So grass doesn't grow very well.
That makes a difference.
It
And,
does, I know.
and sometimes the way the stones are designed and corners, it's not a one size.
It's hard
Oh,
to
no,
know, yeah.
they're all different, yeah, yeah.
So, all right, so I will do better homework on membership.
Well, just really, it's more about the, how you, it might be through fundraising, as it was mentioned.
I see,
Fundraising
yeah.
or,
Not,
Or the
if you
membership.
sell a plot,
Okay.
are you
or, yeah, selling plots.
selling a plot or, and you could talk to the gentleman at Orr's Island, how they do that. Well, theirs is very, very involved with the membership and so forth, but just getting to, if they're selling a plot, how much are they charging for it? Are they selling plots, or does anybody just come in and pick out a spot?
And are there perpetual care funds?
Yes.
And, you know, what does your bank account look like in terms of, you know, your financial situation, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Yes.
We also know about perpetual care. We've got that lesson before.
Yeah, and I never, still don't get that.
I think it says it's supposed to be in a separate account. I mean, there are kind
And
of
it's-
rules
and
that
it's-
you need
and
to
it's-
follow.
Can't use
And-
it.
But you can't use
You
it,
can't use it.
which is very confusing to me. Unless,
You can use the income from it.
Yes,
You can use the
Yes,
interest, but look at
that's
the
yes.
interest rates.
I know.
Well,
it's
But
ridiculous.
if-
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
A lot of other things.
But
can
there
afford
might be a
care.
perpetual care fund. I mean, the way I understood it is no one's taking care of the cemetery, that maybe that perpetual care fund kicked in.
I don't know.
I
I
don't
would
know.
get advice on the.
But yes, get advice on that, too.
Okay. But we do have two accounts. We do have a perpetual account, and both Sandy Swallow and I are on it together. And what I meant by, I think the town office would be great to hold documents like the EIN, once I get that up and running. I don't think it should just be sitting in my house. I think it should be in an area that everybody has access to. I feel
Okay.
that's, we wouldn't have to take up much space, maybe a file cabinet for all 5 towns or 5 cemeteries.
Have it in the cloud.
Yeah. Oh, there
Oh,
we
the
go. In the cloud, yes.
Mackinum old school, and I'm surprised you're not too. There needs to be paper.
There needs to be both. Paper backup. Any more questions for Kim?
No.
No, but thank you.
But great
Thank you
job.
for coming, and thank you for taking on this job.
Yeah.
Thank you, you're welcome. Yeah, when I read the article, I'm like, oh, I just thought it might get outsourced, and I know from working in many places that that's not a good thing, so. I did not realize what I was taking on, but I'm okay. I'm a really good organized person. I run the boatyard. So I just need to figure out exactly what I'm doing, so. And I think once I do, everything is just gonna run totally smooth, so. I know it will. You know, I've got Sandy, I've got George, I got Daddy, I got Yvette Alexander, so I got some good people,
Yeah.
so,
Wonderful.
okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
So much.
Thank you.
You want cookies?
I'm going to propose a 5-minute break. before we get to the rest of the items on our agenda? Is that amenable to people?
Sure. Sounds
Okay,
like a good idea.
5-minute break.
There's cookies in the box, and I don't want them to go home.
Mark.
Huh?
Oh, no.
You've been looking at them and can't get to them, Jane? Is that the
Yeah.
the problem?
I've been doing my share.
Oh, yeah. I did, and it had a picture of the shovel. No.
I was wondering about that.
Definitely looks creepy.
Just surprised. The timing of this is just
No, I think so too. I don't think.
Oh, I'm all set.
round amount is very expensive.
You're welcome.
Could be very expensive, relatively. Put it on a cap plan.
Thanks, Kim.
There's not enough roof to do it. Mitchell Field.
The thing is, I tell you this, we went through this, we went to 2 different companies. We felt, it was like almost a scam. It was like,
It is.
and we weren't really gonna get anything out of it. Even with the,
Terry's
I would,
grandparents were
first thing I would tackle is
and I found it. She knows where it was, but,
understand the
you know,
details.
if you had an ancestor there.
I know, I hate wasted $12,000 on this thing.
You've been walking down roads and gravestones.
I can tell you, based on what I've heard, cost of community solar cost is probably astronomical, because everything, we've had one for 5 years. All the economics are driven by the credits that you earn in the spring and summer.
I have,
So for
had this
done,
But about the project.
you're getting sort of whatever the bare minimum
Yeah.
megawatt, or
well,
kilowatt, megawatt is.
this
I
one.
mean, it's really,
thing is,
it's sort of a scam, like I said, like they're keeping all the money and
I
stuff.
was told several years ago, the reason that
It felt
location
like a scam. The people that
chose
were doing these things were really like
It wasn't
aggressive.
any good for farming.
I
Well,
told
it's
Rick,
too
I said,
dry.
I'm not talking to you anymore. These people,
And it
just,
just go up
if they
there.
call
It's
again,
very
I'm not talking to them.
Right. Like the heat pump business,
Huh.
the installed cost of solar in Maine are the highest in the
Well,
United States.
that's what, behind my house.
Small market, few players
Maybe
set
10
the
grades.
prices.
We are resuming the Budget Advisory Committee meeting on December 2nd. Am I correct that we still need to look at capital reserves?
Right.
And
Yep.
then debt service and Mitchell Field?
And also one special project.
Oh, the special project, yes. So should we go with that first since it's closer in the book? What, 1620?
1650,
Oh,
and you're looking at 1088. A request for 108,000
this is the one we got a handout
last week.
Yes.
Correct.
And Christie gave it to us, and she's going to talk to us
Yes.
about it.
So the town had set aside $400,000 for a revaluation contract. This town signed a contract for $394,000 with a firm out of Massachusetts. It's going to get started very soon. It's almost a 2-year process. The results will impact the 2026 tax bills. But the proposal that we received did not include business personal property. And it also, well, let's talk about the business personal property first. So the assessing department reached out to a company in Connecticut. We're going to try to get some more competitive proposals. So the town has not accepted this proposal, but it's costing on page 3, $88,650. This company, if you had a chance to read the proposal, is very experienced in business personal property. It's kind of an area of assessing that's different from residential assessment. You actually go in and look at equipment, furniture, certain things. And so this company has a lot of experience in that area. We have about 188 accounts in Harpswell. 3 of them are considered large companies, and the proposal is that for those 3 accounts, it's $1,800 to go to each site to do these site visits to look at the equipment. And most of the accounts, 185 of them, are kind of what they consider sole proprietor, smaller businesses or partnerships, and they would charge $450 per business or site visit and all the work related to that. So that proposal is $88,650.
So you need the additional. So you need the additional funding to cover something like this.
Yes. And then the other piece, so we've asked for $108,000. And when we received the revaluation proposal from Vision Appraisal is the company that we hired, the proposal was $420,000. And a good chunk of that, I should say, there was a portion of that which was about $26,000 were for what they call callbacks. So they would go to somebody's residential property. If you weren't home, they were going to say, okay, we'll do a callback. You have to call the company. And they were going to charge the town $26,000 for those callbacks. They said that, well, because it's personnel related, sending people, there's a cost associated with that. They said in many of the communities that they're now doing, instead of callbacks, they do, they provide like a form that people can fill out. So they missed you, and I can't remember if you're supposed to then call and get the form or they leave the form. Anyway, those are some details we need to work out. But one of the things we asked our assessing office to consider doing is to be available to do callbacks, because we thought some people, they're just not going to be home if somebody from the company shows up in, say, February or March, especially if they're a seasonal property owner.
Right.
So right now, we're kind of toying with the idea that it would be our own staff person who would go and collect the data, but we're not sure how well that's going to work, to be honest. And so there's a consideration to put this money in so we can pay Vision to do the callbacks. and that it's sort of all by one company.
But if there's not a lot and we don't, we're not gonna spend it if it works out with the
Right.
assessing office, but we need it there in case that doesn't work out.
It depends what time of year they're going to a lot of these places, or the people are just out. Would the assessing office be required then to go inside the house and look at things, or would they?
The
you know,
callback means that, yes,
They're gonna
because
come
the
back?
company, the company is gonna get all the exterior information, even if no one's there, they'll be able to get that. But the callback involves interior inspections, quality of construction, those kinds of things.
Could you share it with them? You could do some places to
Maybe,
go?
yeah, maybe.
Some arrangement like that?
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, right now, we just don't have any extra money for the callback
Right.
piece, but, yeah, and so our assessing department was really good, they said, we'll try this, let's see how this works.
Sure.
But it might be too much for that, I don't know how that's gonna work
And
out.
when you say the assessing department,
Yeah,
we have an assessor and an assessing assistant.
right,
And the assessor, I
assessor's
assume
agent, in
she-
Harpswell, the select board members are the assessors. They are
Okay,
the
but-
assessors, they make the final decisions on any assessment matters. But we have an assessing agent who's certified by the state of Maine
Right,
to
that's what my
perform these
next-
services and make
So
recommendations.
the assistant is an office assistant, but not trained to do assessing.
Well, the person can go into the field and do
She
much
goes
of-
with the field,
Yeah.
they go out together all,
They would go together.
all summer long now to do the
I know.
permits for the year.
Yeah, I've seen that. Okay. But that person's not trained or certified or
They're
whatever.
not
it is.
certified, but they're with a certified person.
Right, okay, so they'd be doing it together. Okay.
So,
Yeah, Mackin.
Chris, you have this declarative statement, work must begin in 2024, and now
Did-
we have 3
where-
weeks.
Where is that declarative statement, is it?
Oh, he's in the,
Special projects,
under
Line
special.
1088.
Well, let's say, we signed the contract and,
Does
It was
that mean-
supposed to.
So the work started
So
by
that-
contract.
That, by definition, means the work is started.
the contract's been signed, we've received no invoice for work performed to date.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're pushing them
All
to
right.
get going. But December's not a great time of year to be knocking on people's doors.
No, but he went over
Yeah,
steps that
yeah,
he'd be
there-
doing
there's
before
some
that, so.
Public relations work that they can be
We were
doing.
certainly advised it would take that long in order to get it into that reval, and they signed that contract understanding that. Why it hasn't begun, or why we haven't been informed that it's begun, is something that needs follow-up.
I just want to be sure there is no implied penalty behind that we're missing or something of that sort.
No.
Would a summer residence that is a rental property, and the assessing agent knocks on the door from Vision, and the person says, I have no idea what you want to do in this house, you know what I'm saying? Don't come in, because
So that's a callback.
that's a callback, and then
If
then
they're not
our
allowed
assessing
access,
agent would have
that's
to.
a callback.
And there's an awful lot of those properties here in Harpswell that would be vacant in the wintertime.
That's why we really wanted to consider putting that money in,
Yeah.
so the company would be responsible for the callbacks. We thought a lot of people might wish they had been there, but weren't.
Right.
But there is an alternative. You can fill
Someone
out paperwork.
completely unrelated to the property, except that they're paying a fee to
Right.
stay there, is there. Okay, makes sense. I had a quick question, which maybe you know the answer to. What's considered large?
I
A
don't
company,
know.
a business? You don't know?
I
Okay.
could find out for you, but
No,
I don't know.
I can ask the assessing agent that question. It's on the business. We have 3 businesses in town that are considered large. I was
I think
curious.
Safe Harbor is one of them.
Right.
As in the
marina.
boatyard, Gibby, okay. And
Cooks,
I don't know the
the
other.
dolphin cooks.
I just
okay.
don't know.
Yeah,
I think CMP,
Could be CMP.
I think CMP is one of them. They have a lot of personal property in town.
Oh, I
Bait
didn't know that. Okay.
The bait company in Harpswell?
That's pretty.
We're really not certain.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I
that's
don't
not-
want to speculate.
That's fine, I was just curious. And I had thought of the boatyard. Big operation. Any more questions for Christie? Okay, thank you. Capital reserves, 9,200, all the capital reserves that we have not talked about.
And before you turn to that, I just want to remind everyone to maybe take a look at the summary sheet, because what I'm really going to focus on is the capital portion of the budget. And I just wanted you to see that operations was 6.2 and capital is 1.5. So it just kind of gives you a quick overview, and we're really saying that we're holding the capital
Back at-
expenses. Do you
way-
see that?
okay,
It's the
way-
summary.
Way back at the beginning.
Yeah.
Probably is in the front of your book.
I just think it's kind of the big picture, right? Because we're going to get probably into a few of the weeds, but that kind of,
So
Gives you-
repeat it now that we're on the same page.
well, I think it gives you a sense of the capital budget in relation to the operational
It
budget.
was your number 2 sheet.
It's about a fourth of it.
Yeah.
It's
So,
way
Dave, it's
back
that
at the
number 2.
beginning. It looks like this.
Very beginning.
We got it the first day. You're, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So it's really just to kind of look at the 2024, 2025 operational piece, just to kind of get big picture, and then look at the capital line. Okay, so I just thought that would be helpful
It is
before we get
interesting,
started.
yeah.
Pardon?
It is interesting.
Yeah, I just think sometimes we lose sight of the big picture, so I just
Good
wanted to-
point.
And then if we switch to 9,200, we can start going through the proposals. Okay, so the first, I'll just start at the top of the sheet. Land acquisition and improvements. The town created this reserve primarily for positioning itself to be in kind of a better place if a land acquisition came up, but it always has to go back to the town meeting. So any money expended from the land acquisition and improvement fund, in this particular fund, has to go back to the town meeting for approval. The select board can't make a decision to buy certain land or make improvements from this fund unless it goes back to the town meeting. We had a request from the Town Lands Committee combined with the Harbor and Waterfront Committee that this fund should be at $100,000.
Right.
And so you can see, we have about 46,000 in the fund. We're requesting to put 60 in to bring that up to that $100,000 level.
Okay.
I'm
Question.
confused.
Okay.
If you have to go back to the select board or the town meeting in order to use the funds, why have the fund?
Because there have been some people from, especially the Town Lands Committee, saying there might be some property that comes up for sale, and if the town at least has some money available, maybe you're in a better position to be able to say, we can put some,
A down payment?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a bit like Mary Ann's.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
you know.
yeah. We could maybe do something that says subject to town meeting approval.
Yes, okay. Makes sense.
Contingency.
So I'm a little confused by the
All right.
statement that's with that down below. Remaining, something, 5,000
Oh.
remaining?
Yes, the town, so of that 46, 5,000 is still available for something the town meeting approved for improvements at the Old Town Meeting House and the cemetery, so we're still working on expending those funds.
Okay, that's not under the old townhouse.
So 2
account.
years ago, or time's escaping me, but voters approved use up to, I think, I'm going off of memory, $35,000 for use out of that account instead of raising and appropriating to do the painting, some work on the cemetery, on the gravestones. And so we've spent the majority of that. Of that approval, $5,000 is remaining that we will put together with the other funds that we have asked for under 1210, account number 1210, raise and appropriate to finish the cemetery stone cleanings.
Thank you. I was just confused when I read that.
No, I can understand.
Okay, so this would bring that account to around 101,000.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, the next account is the town office facilities, HVAC. This reserve, the select board can authorize the expenditure of. And basically, this is covering our new HVAC system. And, you know, we have enough money in the account now to cover the HVAC, because we've already spent, you can see the expended is like 90,000. So that 90 plus the 435 that's in there, we have enough to cover this whole system that's being put in, but we don't want to leave ourselves too close to zero, so we're recommending 75 in there. And that money can be used broadly. We mentioned that we're going to finish the HVAC. We had to put a new propane boiler in recently. And this sidewalk entrance area is really kind of a mess, and it's
All ice too.
It becomes icy.
we're suggesting that we're probably going to use some of that money to try to
Fix that.
improve that situation out there.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then we have a vehicles account, so this is really to fund the emergency vehicles through the law enforcement or marine. I say, they're not really, well, they're rescue or response vehicles. I'm not sure what to call them. Police response or marine patrol response in the county contracts. Whenever they ask us to purchase a vehicle
vehicle.
under the contract, we utilize this reserve fund.
They tend to be.
And we have quite a fleet now, don't we, Terry? I think we have 5 vehicles that they've returned to us that our staff is using. But anyway, this is the capital account for the purchase.
And fire department vehicles and
That's-
EMS, they're
That's a
separate.
separate account.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's separate. And then we have the recycling center and transfer station. You discussed that with
You
Chuck.
skip media technology.
Because there's no appropriation.
proposal for that.
Good reason to skip it. Okay.
Then you discussed the transfer station and recycling with Chuck. Boat and motor replacement, 5,000. Office equipment, 5,000. Then, Mackin, as you mentioned, there is a separate capital account for emergency services vehicles like
Okay.
fire
I saw the
trucks,
schedule.
ambulances, that type of thing. And the schedule is to purchase something for Cundy's Harbor in 2025. What are they calling that vehicle?
Squad 5.
Squad 5. And you have a schedule
I saw that.
provided, yep. Emergency services equipment, we've got some money in there and some ARPA money, so we're not proposing to put anything in. Next is capital roads, we discussed that, the 400,000. Dry hydrant, 5,000. And that takes us to just over $1 million. And the rest of the capital is debt service, and Terry can talk about that.
So if this committee next week reach consensus on the 24,000, then obviously this area goes up. And as you know, you've had other changes in other operations, which I've been tracking those changes and will be providing that to the committee before you make your final decision.
Are we moving to debt service, or
Sure.
that was debt service?
No, debt service, 7,000.
I didn't think so. Okay. What's the number?
7,000.
7,000, thank you. I'm sure you have these memorized. Oh, goodness, did I put this back in the wrong place? I did. Oh, I didn't, here it is. Okay.
So if you're ready, you've been provided with two schedules, one showing our current payments that are due, and this is something that, you know, when we do a borrowing, there's no then later negotiating, so this is what we owe, and that's the bottom line to that. The only thing that's flexible in that area would be the short-term tax anticipation note financing interest, but the rest is
Yeah.
in stone. I did include, at the time this book was prepared prior to the November 5th vote, but that borrowing for the Mitchell Field boat launch did pass, and so in 2025, that would be one interest payment included. And so you do see a decrease from 570,000 last year to 515,000, which again will go up the following year, adding a principal payment for the Mitchell Field boat launch. And then you were provided the long-term to see how it plays out with the rest of the borrowings as they fall off or continue on.
It's interesting that the blended rate right now on all this debt is 2.9%. Very, very good. But unfortunately, it's a ominous warning that it's probably going to be substantially higher.
Yeah, as we saw on
Just
the,
come through, 10, 12 years of very low interest rates.
well, and as it shows on the April 2023 borrowing, that interest is 4.79.
But I'm just comparing the 2025 interest calculation against the debt balance of the 1st of January, and that's what the number is. That's
Well, there is an item to bring to your attention. I think it might have been on the list early on when we said not currently included in the budget. And that is the possibility of an emergency services building, a central building.
right.
So that would come to you if it continues to move forward.
Indeed.
So that could contribute, maybe not so much in 2025, because, it could be just an interest payment potentially.
But maybe the funding for going out on our own, again, you need a financial advisor to go out and issue your own bonds. So we may be back for that, but yeah, that wouldn't be under debt.
Where does that stand? Is it, do we have a consultant
it's
talking to us
the-
now, or not?
Committee is getting the final report from the consultant on Monday, the 9th.
Consultant.
There's been a request of the select board to do some more study and analysis. So I think the select board is gonna talk more about that this Thursday,
Okay,
if they're interested in doing some more analysis.
okay.
Is that the article in the Anchor? It was from Horace Bailey.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So if that happened to go through, that would roughly double the amount outstanding on this page. Big number.
Yes.
Do you have any sense of what the rate on that kind of a financing would look like now? I assume you're gonna use the 20-year, 30, some long dated.
Yeah, probably 20. We would go out on our own, like we did when we issued the bonds for the pier, which resulted in quite a savings.
Do you know what the 20-year part of the curve looks like for Harpswell now?
No, so that's what our financial advisor would help with.
Somewhere between 4% and 5%.
I would say probably right around there.
But the town has enjoyed an enormous benefit, for the last 10, 12 years. And, that shouldn't be underestimated. It's allowed you to do many other things.
Good point.
We have very high credit ratings. Standard & Poor's and all of the above.
Anything else for Terry on this? Okay, thank you. And the last one on this list is account 9400 Mitchell Field.
So under Mitchell Field, I had recommended that the town consider doing some testing of the soils. And so that's what I think we might do with that 5,000 under contracted services. That's a new figure.
Is that for everywhere in Mitchell Field or
It-
near the administration building?
I think, not necessarily near the administration building, but key areas like that are heavily used, like maybe the garden area.
Is that targeted at PFAS?
Yes, yes.
Christie, I had a general question that, looking at the 24 expended is about $25,000 on that. What fees do we collect against that?
Very little. For some rentals of the bandstand or the general area of Mitchell Field.
But if you look at it more broadly, we have interest, or we have lease income coming off of the.
Marine
marine
and the ice cream area.
Right,
Yes,
which
yeah.
goes to the general fund, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're accounted for in different places. But the balance is, if you include those, is roughly zero.
Is that a correct assumption?
Maybe not as this request has gone up over time, you know.
Solar tower is what, 36?
Well,
Cell tower.
we
We're
have,
gonna get a capital payment of 35,000,
yeah.
which will go towards our emergency communications equipment.
But the annual lease fee, do you remember off the top of your head? It's like, is it,
We can certainly gather that for you for your next meeting,
Well, it'd be
before you do
interesting just to
consensus,
see
if you'd
is
like
Mitchell-
that.
Is Mitchell Field carrying itself?
well, we're
all.
covering, I want to say 50% if you look at the lease fees and the income from the cell tower, but we're not covering 100%.
Okay.
If you're saying, is it carrying itself?
Well, that's what I.
Partially.
I mean, the gold standard would be you are paying 100, but that's not really
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
But
Because it's a public amenity.
it's a public park. Yeah.
And of course, this is just operations. I mean, we know we have a reserve account that's been
True.
being used for our boat launch. We've had past reserve accounts. We have done hundreds and thousands of dollars of work at Mitchell Field. So if you're asking that in regards to operations, maybe there's 50%, but if you do it in the bigger scheme of things, it
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
come close.
Yeah, like paying back the pier removal bond?
No,
Or the
So,
new,
you
or the
know.
new boat launch.
no, I'm going about ongoing operations.
You're looking at ongoing operations.
The request for 24,000, they mentioned the generator building and the Century building. Are there specific uses for those? I think the generator building is being used for
It's just being
storage.
used for storage right now,
But
so
what's
I
the
think
Century
that,
building?
pardon?
The Century building, they want to clear and paint?
It's still storage. There's been no approval by the select board in terms of uses other than sort of this storage at this point, but the committee may have some ideas for that. I mean, we got a grant, and DEP went into these buildings and found some issues, some materials that need to be removed. So I'm not sure there should be much use of those buildings until that aspect is taken care of.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what the Century building would be used for. It's pretty small.
It does have a
Storage.
lot of storage in there for us now, our road signs.
Oh, okay.
And some other storage, and the steward of, we've seen over the years, like on the generator building, when he says paint window enclosures, we have found that if the location looks good, it is not vandalized the way that it was before. If it looked unkept and not taken care of, and then so the stewards started painting the fire hydrants, they started painting flowers on the community garden building, started painting and taking care of the buildings, and maybe it's a coincidence, I don't know, but we've seen incredible comments, of course, in regards to how nice it's looking, but also a severe reduction in vandalism.
Okay,
It's huge.
it's a good thing to know.
Chairman, there's been some talk about Stewart retiring at some point. I don't know where that stands, but are you contemplating a paid position to take up some of that slack if that occurs?
We actually asked the committee to make a recommendation, and they submitted their budget with no recommendation regarding the steward.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, we were surprised, because we've said to the Mitchellfield Committee, help us understand what you think we should have for monitoring services, and we know this person is thinking of stepping down, but we didn't get anything from the budget, so I'm not really sure where the committee sees that position going,
It's been a volunteer position.
essentially.
I think they have another person.
Oh, another
Ready to
volunteer?
volunteer?
Yeah,
Oh,
I've-
maybe
I
that's
think
the
they
answer. I don't know.
News to me.
Really? Because the current steward is still,
I know.
he's still
He
volunteering,
is
the
still
current
volunteer,
steward.
But he told me that this other person was coming on, and sometimes we have seen some other person down there.
Hasn't been mentioned at the
I think
committee.
we're fortunate enough to have Don in that role.
It hasn't been
I know.
mentioned in the
Maybe for
committee.
some while, but
I know. Yeah.
Enough cannot be said
No,
for his
no,
volunteerism,
no.
for sure.
Right,
Yeah.
off the charts, yeah, definitely.
Used to run this committee.
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
yeah, as he likes to remind me.
And that committee, good too.
That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you so much for that. Any others on this list? All right, back to our agenda. And I think we're ready for consensus items.
Yeah.
So the first one is account 1225, where they're asking for $1,000 for the town dock.
So just by way of update, the question was asked last week if the town, obviously, if we move forward with reconstruction of the dock, it won't, March town meeting has to weigh in on it. It likely
Right.
would not be ready for next summer.
Right.
The chair asked if you would be putting the floats back out with the cost, does that $1,000 cover it? So I have looked up the cost involved with that. I will say that if you want to cover the costs, you would want to increase this to $5,000. But I want everyone to be aware that that doesn't mean that the town will go forward with doing those floats again. There may be other alternatives, or there may not be an option for next year. It'll start with Harbor and Waterfront. That was a trial year. There's severe concerns about people traversing down over that embankment, and we're not certain that the town will go forward with that again. But if you want that there as an option, you will want to increase this account to $5,000.
It costs $5,000 to put the floats in.
So this year it cost, between the towing of you've got to tow the floats from Mitchell Field to the landing or to the marina, and then the marina brings them over and set them up, and then the marina removes it, and then they're towed back to Mitchell Field. So it's two-way traffic there. And I did build in a little increase because there was increase in towing, and I'm just not sure how that would be. It truly cost us about $4,400 this year, but I'm recommending, if you want that as a placeholder, you would want to include $5,000. And there was minimal mowing there of $200. So if you want to do that, that would be $5,000, and then that would be a decision of the select board, probably starting with the Harbor and Waterfront Committee. They would explore some options, bring a recommendation to the select board. But if that ends up being what gets done, you do want the money there. So that was asked last week, and that information is here before you.
So if we approve that larger amount, that just gives the select board the flexibility.
To do that option, or another option, or it lapses to the general fund, correct?
I agree.
So is that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is all in favor to increase that to 5,000?
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous.
And you typically don't vote until you get to the end. I mean, if you just want to reach consensus that you're,
Well, our consensus is that that item should be 5,000
Right.
instead of 1,000.
right, okay, so I'll go with the consensus of that. I'm saying you don't have to vote for it.
Well, we were changing an amount, I thought we
Yeah.
did. Okay, fine. All right. And then possible rebuild, what are we discussing on that, Terry?
Nothing. I just
Nothing.
wanted that on you. I guess I didn't take it off when I copied my agenda down to consensus.
Okay.
But I had it on your agenda because I wanted Paul to provide the committee with an
Right,
update on that.
Right, which he did, okay. All right, so we're okay with this budget with the increase to 5,000 for repair and maintenance. Thank you. Next item, town landings, which is the next one in your book. Everybody's good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, and law enforcement, which is 3,100.
Fine.
Yep.
Okay. Marine wardens,
Fine,
including the boat operations and marine services.
That's okay.
Yes,
fine.
okay. Marine consultant conservation. I have to look at that again, apologize. 3,115.
I will say Harbor Master Plummer wanted me to provide the committee with the answer. You had asked about the landings details, if that includes the harvested farms.
Oh, yeah.
And he confirmed with DMR that those landings include all harvested farms. So that's why cohogs are so much greater, because there's many farms of those.
For cohogs.
But they are included in those
But
landing
is
figures.
that also why oysters has gone up
American
quite a
oyster.
bit, too?
It's all included.
Okay. All right, so do we, while we're consensusing on this one, if that's a word, there was some discussion about figuring out if DMR would reimburse us more for his work. Is that another, the harbor masters?
Well, that might be more of a fee
A
recommendation.
fee
we make.
recommendation, okay,
Yeah.
I'll leave that out then.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're good with that one. Harbor master,
And so that one had a $8,000 decrease
okay,
last week.
okay. All right, we're good?
Yep.
Yep. Cundy's Harbor Library, I think she gave us a good explanation of what she
Yep.
was doing.
Fine.
Okay. All right, and recreation, including programs, we're good?
So, I wanted to follow up. Last week, I gave you a heads up that there was a request for paving aprons at Truth and Somerton Ball Field
Oh,
and at
yes.
Devil's Back. And I needed to follow up with the
Yes.
Recreation Committee, which that was done. And so it's being recommended that to your program list, you'll see Truth and Somerton is down at $2,000, that you increase that to $7,000, so you increase that by 5 to contribute towards the paving. And the trails hiking subcategory 6496, that you increase that 1,500 to 6,500 for that paving project as well. So you're increasing this $9,800 or it's before you, for your consideration, to increase that by $10,000. So it would be $19,800 with 2 specific projects in mind: Devil's Back apron, Truth and Somerton apron, and a little further up the hill.
And Devil's Back is our land.
Town property.
It's not land.
Right, so the land trust will contribute towards the Truth and Somerton.
Right, which is great. Okay, so some changes there. Is everybody good? Okay, thank you. And contingency, 1,600.
And that was requested to be increased by $15,000 last week, so that would bring it to 25,000. And that's because you heard that there are several accounts that will likely use the majority of the contingency in 2024.
Okay? Everybody's good? All right. And finally, special projects, marine hazards, that's a new item there. And because of marine hazards we've had recently.
So we did have that in existence prior to 2024, but the request is to go to increase it. it was being maintained at 10,000. Obviously, with the storms in January, we used all of that, and that's why he was able to, if you proceed with the recommendation for $20,000 here, that's why he reduced his budget by 8,000, because certain things that he was doing out of his budget would come from the marine hazards.
Okay.
You explained that well.
Yes, thank you. A question, why is that a special project? Why doesn't that end up under harbor master or one of the?
So, because, as I explained last week, these are reserves, these funds will stay in there and they will carry forward. And the town doesn't typically carry forward operations. And so maybe special projects is not the best terminology if you see that as a one-off, but.
It seemed like there were new things that.
There's
in my
certainly new
recollection,
things
yeah.
and likely one-offs, but some of them are regulars, like the, we self-insure for unemployment. That's a reserve that continues to carry over. So this is amongst the list, in addition to capital reserves that the select board votes on every year on what can carry forward.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining that again.
Absolutely.
Are we good on that one?
Yes.
Yes. All right. And now we're moving to other matters, which includes the minutes from the last meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minute with
Second.
with the corrected date of the time of this meeting being 2 o'clock, not 3.
And there was a change suggested.
I suggested a change, wherever it was. Where was it? Oh, under, since the, oh, you changed it already.
No.
Did you?
Nope.
Oh, okay. All right, I suggested under the Potts Point dock that we actually mention what was discussed there, which was, we have received insurance money. Is that
We have
correct?
received some, yes.
Okay, and the amount, because that was made public. And then what he was doing, he was starting to get an engineering proposal and using $10,000 out of the resiliency fund. Since that was on our agenda last week, I thought public reading this should see that. So I'm making a motion. So can I do that? Motion to amend the minutes with that addition.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of changing that? Aye. Okay. Now, with that change, I've forgotten Robert's rules. We have a motion, and we're going to, never mind. Are we approving the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. There used to be a procedure for all that. It probably still is.
Too
Okay.
wound up.
Thank you, Terry, for putting together these minutes.
You're
2
welcome.
o'clock next week?
So.
Do we have any other matters?
Yeah, so schedule, so you can't start at 2 next week. There is
darn.
there is a meeting in this room prior to that will likely go right up to 3. And there's a meeting right after. So this room has to be vacated by the Budget Committee by 4:30. So next week it can go 3 to 4:30. But that is your last regular meeting. If you looked ahead to your proposed meeting schedule, then the 16th can be your final consensus and budget recommendation to the Select Board. And that, if you get through next week's agenda, that's all you will have on that. So not only have you freed up the 23rd, you'll have a short meeting on the 16th. So so the fire departments are coming next week, so that's exclusively what that meeting is. They will be here for a 1 o'clock meeting in this room earlier, and then they will remain and move into the Budget Advisory Committee meeting. So that's on your agenda next week.
Okay, so we'll have to be very
We have to be
concise.
prompt and, yes,
It's 15 minutes.
or at least hear from your representatives, and then
Right.
can
And
carry on the conversation at the following meeting.
would we not be asking them about their opinion about the possible new EMS?
That'll be a tangent.
No, we just want to know about
They
operations.
might have made a recommendation after their meeting, so
Okay,
after the presentation at that meeting.
okay. All right, but we're mostly looking at operational with them, all right?
What they've requested.
Right.
Yeah.
And then your fire administrator department as well will
Right.
be here, and the paramedic. So it's all the emergency.
Okay, right. Anything else for us, Terry?
That's it. So 3 o'clock next week.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you so much.
Missed
Thank you.
that schedule. I had one.
Thank you.
posted.
Thank you, Mark. Please.